June 23rd at 5:31 p.m. And I guess we'll start with a moment of silence. Thank you. We'll stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Miss Jenny, we're ready for roll call, please.
Okay, Chair White.
Here?
Vice Chair James is absent. Member Williams is also absent. Member Jones.
Here.
Member Ambrose.
Here.
All right. Now we will entertain a motion to approve the agenda, please, for June 23rd.
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Second. Thank goodness. Second. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, the agenda's approved, 3-0. Now we need a motion to approve the minutes, please, from the May 22nd CRA meeting.
I will go ahead and move we approve those minutes from May 22nd.
Second.
Okay, our trustee second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Minutes are approved, 3-0. All right, first item on the agenda, number 1, discuss, consider, and act on new dumpster enclosure behind the CRA office.
Good evening, good afternoon. Good evening, good afternoon. Chair Whites, board members. This issue that I'm bringing to you now, the new dumpster closure, is one that's been plaguing the interior of our block, which runs from 237th Street to Main Street and from 27 to 185th Road. Businesses from the Springs Institute all the way around to the old bike shop use it, specifically the Mexican restaurant. Currently, the dumpster at the end of the easement that runs next to our building, they're, if you can see them on the picture, they're located standing behind each other. That area back there is very difficult to navigate. As you can see, business owners park back there. It is also a very narrow space. The dumpsters themselves are not in a very good location. They are next to a power pole with I believe it's three-phase power lines going over top of them, which is always a hazard. Besides the safety issues of that, there's also some health risks going on with not enough containers being there. Oftentimes, the dumpsters are full and overflowing, and the buzzards get into them because the doors can't be shut. The only solution that staff we have looked at, and Bruce and I and have discussed with Ashley also, is putting in new dumpster facilities. You can see on the show, on the screen, those are the current dumpsters, what they look like. First of all, aesthetically, it's not very pleasing. When people come through town, those are visible on traveled streets throughout the town right there. That's just the surrounding area. You can see what it looks like. You can also see currently where the orange fence is up. That is the property line for the Priest Theater. The easement is basically 10 feet either side of those dumpsters, so it's not a very wide area for traffic to pass through or for power services to access. That's what it looks like looking back to the road. Cars pass by every day, and of course you can see the back of the CRA building right there. Proposed location would be behind the CRA building. It is geographically the only area large enough to put these dumpsters in a location that's safe enough to allow the trucks to get in raise the dumpsters, put it in the back of their truck, set them back down, and get back out of the area right there. There's a view right there. We've measured out, we can get a dumpster enclosure that is 3 dumpsters wide. And we had to do that with a zone or a lot variance, which was approved internally by staff and has already been signed off on. It would take it to just about the property line. The setback for that, I believe, is 7 feet, but we've been approved to go outside the 7-foot setback. That's from the front. The dumpster, proposed dumpster, would sit about where the yellow wall is right there. That will allow plenty of room for the garbage trucks to pull into the dumpster enclosure, back slightly out, and to raise the dumpsters and dump the trash and set them back down in there. That's it from a little farther back. At this time is in the basin, grinder pump basin is also located in this area. The grinder pump basin for the building is one that needs to be changed anyways. It is a commercial size basin for a restaurant. It's probably about 4 feet in diameter. Our building does not need one that large. What happens is when you have a basin that large and you don't use it enough, the wastewater tends to sit in there longer than it should, so it becomes an issue rather than getting pumped out, being in a smaller basin on a quicker basis. So Bruce, and along with Thomas in Public Works and Alan helping out, we were going to go down to a smaller basin anyways, which is better for the wastewater system. So while going down to a smaller basin, we will be moving the basin over to the west side of the building, which is where the new pizza place is going in. It would be next door to their basin also. I did not have a picture of it. The dumpster enclosure, this is provided by Paul Stressing. This dumpster enclosure is one he's used before. It is already engineered. It is a approved set of plans. It has bollards on the inside of it that protect the dumpsters from hitting the block wall. The block wall, as you can see, it's wide enough to hold, in fact, there we go, I made a larger one for you. It's wide enough for 3 dumpsters. It is tall enough so that the dumpsters will not be seen, and it has gates that will be shut to hide the dumpsters as well. The proposed new location is farther away from the restaurant and from the other businesses along 27, but for the it would provide to those businesses and even the restaurant itself, for those people who choose to dine outside, they'll be able to just buggy their trash down and throw it into the dumpster. At this time, we are asking to be able to take this project and see if we can get some quotes on it and go to bid on it.
I gotta tell you, if I didn't know this dumpster was a lot of problems to a lot of people, I would say, boy, CRA is getting a lot of stuff done to their office between the roads and sidewalks. But I have heard that there are real problems with this. A lot of people have complained about it. So hopefully, it looks like it might be a little pricey, but we'll just have to wait and see what comes up. Do you have any idea?
No, Alan, Thomas, do y'all have any potentially?
Okay.
on what it would be?
Just an estimate of what we're looking at, 5,000 or 50,000? Maybe not high enough, huh? Okay, thank you.
There also will be the cost of moving the basin, having to change the plumbing from where it currently goes out on the north side of the building, moving it over.
But you're going to do that anyway, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So do you have any idea how much that's going to cost?
Yes, in your packet,
Was
I've
it
got
for-
it. the proposal from Shear Construction, who has been doing the work for the city.
I saw the 4,000, it said parts.
Yeah, those were the parts for the new, and then you can see, so we're looking at about $11,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Do we know where the new pizza restaurant will be staging their dumpster?
I don't know if they're gonna have a dumpster.
I would have to look at their plans. They submitted it when they did their site plan. I'd have to ask the city manager. I didn't see it.
Because this orientation doesn't provide, I mean, there wouldn't, I mean, if we're trying to solve problems for people in that area, and we solve it for that whole other, area, but we haven't solved it for that new restaurant, that's just a question that I'm throwing out there. The next part of it is, the reason it has a big grinder pump right now is because that building used to be a restaurant.
Correct.
Okay, so the change of use does occur, and right now it's a CRA property because it was an opportunity, and we're discussing, the building department taking it over. But let's say 5 or 10 years from now, or maybe, sometime, we put that back on the market, because that's an asset of the city that might be better used as our downtown is built out. So we're potentially about to spend $11,000 at our expense, to change the grinder pump, which, I understand about it being too large and how you don't put enough volume in there for it to turn on the pump and all that. But, we're about to spend that money, and we're about to dedicate a large hunk of land, because it's not only the pad, but the access to the pad for the benefit of all those commercial businesses. So are they willing to contribute anything? Because now basically we're gonna cut off, turn the value of that piece of property, we're gonna diminish it, because we're now gonna provide a city service there long-term. So I'm a little concerned about that. And what's the frequency of service on the 2 existing dumpsters?
Weekly, sometimes if not twice a week.
So I'm just wondering if a short-term solution might be to force their business, like any other business might have to do, to go to more frequent service, so that we don't have the overflowing issue. And at least see if that eliminates that particular problem. But, so I have questions. I don't know whether the truck can actually maneuver in and out of there. I assume you've looked to see that the truck would actually be able to pull in and back out. Because again, you said it's a 10-foot right-of-way. That's a big truck. I live at a dead end. I watch it turn around, so.
The easement's 20 feet wide. I was talking about one half of the easement, if that's where you were going with that earlier.
Well, I thought you said the existing easement behind the buildings that the truck travels down to get to the dumpsters is 10 feet.
It's 20.
It's 20, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so then the other thing that I just use as a reference, because I did live in Chicago, where they have small alleys, their solution is that instead of there being the larger dumpsters, they have the narrower dumpsters on wheels, and literally one side of the alley is lined up with these dumpsters, and when the truck comes there, the rider gets out, turns the dumpster, truck dumps it, and you just keep going. It's because they don't have the room. They do have enough room to allow a vehicle to go through, and just enough room for a dumpster to sit on the side. So maybe the solution is to pave that right away and make it easier.
Well, that right of way is not a road easement. That is
Okay.
the easement only. So we have water and sewer underground there.
Okay.
Along with some other utilities as well.
So
just to give you a heads up.
And then have any of the property owners expressed any interest in contributing to basically what's probably going to amount to over $30,000 of cost to the city to the benefit of those specific businesses?
I have not spoken to the businesses to find out if anybody would be willing to contribute. This was something we've been trying to figure out in the area with the amount of code enforcement complaints we've had.
It's a problem.
That have been going on for the last several years. And speaking with Alan and Thomas and even David and having some additional conversations, this was one of the solutions we came up with And really the only property we could do this on would be city property in the area. There's not enough property for any of the single businesses back there with the way that easement is for this to go anywhere else. And putting it on city property, we would maintain it at that point, and we can ensure it stays somewhat clean for that matter. Because it has caused some really big issues with downtown Blake through there. It doesn't look real good. We have issues with the buzzards down there. We really need to clean it up. It's not real appealing back there.
Oh, I don't agree. This is an issue that absolutely needs to be addressed. I'm a little uncomfortable at the diminished property value of a city asset there by dedicating it there, because we've already talked about how, we would easily could outgrow that building, and what would be the purpose of keeping it. So then it doesn't become as saleable if we've used that 20-foot right-of-way in the back to put dumpsters on. So, the cost we talked about as a group of about, I don't know, I think it was 300,000 or something, as an internal transfer, I don't know that value would hold. So again, I have thoughts about maybe the businesses should be paying for more frequent cleaning, instead of just as a start to see if that can address some of that, and maybe landscaping and some privacy fencing, might help a lot of other issues at less of a cost.
There's no place to put any privacy fencing right now. You can see they have already set one dumpster to the side to get to the second dumpster. So there's no place to put any kind of privacy fencing for anything of that nature. So that's the option
Well,
right there.
why couldn't, I understand it's an easement, so that's not sitting on city property, but what's to say that those property owners couldn't pay to put up the fence at the back of their property, so that you're not seeing it from, as you walk by the Priest Theater or you're over at the brewery or things like that.
But you also got to be careful with emergency access back there too, with putting up any fence in that easement or right of way, just to make sure we're not impeding any access points as well. Because it's already a pinch point on the backside where the old library property is, that you got to be careful as well.
Excuse me. So what were you saying about that? Would it make it more difficult for fire to get back there, or, if they're going to?
You put a fence up, you're just putting another obstacle in the way. I don't know how we'd have to structure it and set it up. If you just put a fence up in that area, I'd have to look at it, and we'd have to really lay it out. That was part of the other reason we looked at trying to get it off the beaten path, if you will, and put it onto our property.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, and I'll try to be as delicate as I can be. One of the issues with these particular dumpsters involves, generally speaking, one particular business. Moving the dumpsters won't necessarily lead them to be better stewards of the environment in terms of where they're dumping their trash and how they're dumping their trash. I think I like the idea of doing something by all means, because it's something I hear about a lot. But I'm concerned if we move it over to behind the CRA building and the same behavior maintains, then that's going to be a blight for a city property because it's going to be in the same condition. What could we do to prevent that?
I think the positive with this is by putting them in a dumpster enclosure. You won't have the same visual effects with the garbage overflowing, if you will, as they empty them. At least it's contained into a bricked-in area, a walled-in area that can be scooped out and put back into the dumpster, and it closes it up, so it helps eliminate some of that blight. Hopefully, this will encourage them to become better stewards of that area. I hope, but we had to come up with something. And that's why we're bringing it to the board now. If you guys have some different ideas or thought processes, we'd love to explore some additional options as well. But I think this fits well into what a CRA project would be to help clean up this area.
I don't disagree with you on that, Bruce. I would be curious to, if we go out to get construction bids on this, to concurrently also discuss it with all of the business owners that use those dumpsters? Because right now they've got 2, and you said that the new enclosure could hold 3.
Correct.
Does that mean the cost of their solid waste disposal goes up because there's another dumpster?
I'm not sure what the contract with, I think it's GFL now, WCA, what GFL, what the city's contract says, and if the city can request another dumpster for use, if there's a set price per dumpster that the city gets charged for, or if it's in increments of 5, I'm not sure. Bruce, do you have any idea about that?
I don't know. I'd have to look and see how their trash is broke down, how their garbage is broke down. I'm not sure if it's their communal dumpsters and everybody pays a fee, much like for instance, the dumpster at the fire station is split between the library and the city. I'm assuming this is split amongst each parcel down there, so adding a third could possibly do that. Could increase the garbage, but right now we know we have the issue, and I don't think, at least I wasn't planning on putting a third dumpster down there right away. We were just looking at having a pad big enough if we do increase businesses, because if we got another restaurant down there in that district or in that area, say the bike shop's for sale right now, and somebody comes in and puts a restaurant there, we're going to have to put a third dumpster. Even with the pizza place coming in there right now, I believe they use dumpsters behind. If that's their usage, then we're going to have to look at increasing capacity back there anyhow.
My understanding, Bruce, from talking to business owners, is that it's a flat rate fee per business. I don't think there's a sliding scale in terms of what people pay. Is that correct?
I think it is a flat fee. I just don't know if it's a flat fee for what that dumpster is, or if they pay just what the flat fee for the commercial is.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to ask finance.
Speaking with the businesses I have, I know they'd be happy to, to say, hey, we got a small increase, but I don't have these dumpsters right behind my business now. It's in an enclosed, and I know when I take my trash down there, I'm gonna have a place to put it. They are much happier with that. Now, are they willing to, write a check to the city to contribute to the construction or move anything? The answer on that is gonna be no.
Well, I wonder if we might, in conjunction with doing something like this, also revisit how we're billing the individual businesses, because certainly, a hair place, Jody's, isn't going to generate as much waste as a restaurant would. I don't know Jim's shop how much trash he generates, but I wonder if that's a possibility or not.
So, Chair, when I had my business here in town, it was the size of my dumpster and how frequently I had it emptied. So there's an estimate for the amount of trash being generated. I'm sure they're being charged on that and the frequency being dumped. Will the new business that's going in, hey there, between the CRA building and the brewery, are they having any sort of outdoor seating or anything like that? Because, El Patio has a backyard courtyard and the dumpsters are right there, and you indicated there's odor. Well, will this odor now be an issue for, businesses that aren't generating that kind of trash? And even once a week service, in this heat, for that large amount of particularly food waste, I mean, you're asking for odor and problems. So, yeah, and once a week is cheaper. I mean, I get it. Is it? Okay, thank you.
There will be some small amount of outdoor seating. I spoke to the new owners who are putting in the restaurant, and they said they're not having more than 20 seats in that place, indoor and outdoor. So it's mainly a to-go place is what it's going to be.
But they are going to have outdoor seating.
Very little.
But they are, I mean, so have they weighed in on these new dumpsters that currently aren't even on the radar?
The dumpster enclosure would still be farther from them than the current dumpster is now from El Patio.
It'd be,
The proposed location is still.
We're only looking at moving the dumpsters like 17 feet, I think is what it is. I think the smell isn't going to be relatively different from 17 feet from where they're located now to where they're going.
Is from the current location of the dumpsters to the back gate of El Patio is closer than what the proposed location is to the pizza place going in.
Okay.
One thing that I would be interested in seeing, if you don't mind asking, David, I don't know if they're amenable or not, but I'm used to seeing construction proposals as time and materials instead of lump sum. Is that something that they would be willing to put together?
Are you talking about when we go to,
Moving the grinder pump, the sharers?
the Shearer? Yes, I can get with Thomas and contact Shearer Construction, see if they can give us a quote that's a little bit more itemized.
Yeah, it would just help me connect the dots, and I understand them giving us 30 days here to accept is pretty generous, since pricing changes every day.
And this one's actually been over 30 days, so,
Oh, really?
yes. This is dated April.
Yeah.
Mr. Ambrose, another suggestion, if you guys were to approve and go forward, you could put a wall gate in the backside of it for Prohibition Pizza. Could be access for them, 'cause that's gonna be the dumpster they call a dumpster. They don't.
So but the dumpsters would be oriented backwards to that gate.
Yeah.
And if the dumpsters were set at the back of I'm just,
In my packet, I've got it drawn out somewhat to scale. There is room between the
so we're basically talking about turning the entire back of the building, that 20 foot, into a public easement permanently to handle downtown trash on that block.
This is a public service. This is what we do as government. It is,
Oh.
provide
We provide public services, but I'm gonna disagree with you that we give away public land to the benefit of those property owners.
I was going with finding solutions to the trash. It's
Any more questions? You're being real quiet down there.
I'm trying to picture them in my mind, so maybe when I come down and take a look at what y'all trying to do here. How many businesses? I'm trying to do it in my head. How many businesses along that use those dumpsters?
yoga studio, Unique Notion, shop, art gallery, clubhouse athletic.
Okay, so that's all those? So, I'm losing my bearing here. So all those on Main, and then the ones that's facing, my goodness. Yeah.
So again, we have approximately $10,000 for the grinder pump area, which is what you're gonna move anyway, regardless. Okay. And then we've got approximately $7,000 for the enclosure. That's what we're looking at, okay.
So then is our next course of action to ask you to go out and get some bids for this? And in conjunction with that, would we also be surveying all of the businesses to get their feedback as well?
That's what I would like to see, so we can at least move forward and try to get a report back to the board by next month's meeting. We can get some further direction.
And Chair, I'm amenable to that, but I'd also like to find out what this would do to the property value. because we've currently got an estimate that says it's over $300,000, and if we're gonna turn the back 20 feet from both sides access to the dumpsters, then what does that do to that value for the citizens? Because that's an asset of the CRA.
So is that what we want to do?
I make a motion the city move forward with securing some estimates, verifying the turning radius, and also trying to identify the impact on the property value of the CRA building.
As well as communicating with the business owners in tandem.
Correct, to see if they are open to contributing to these costs.
I second.
Any further discussion? Anybody from the audience have any input? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? All right, motion carries 5-0. Next on the agenda is discuss, consider, and act on downtown bathroom railing bid.
Two meetings ago, I brought four quotes from 4 different vendors regarding the installation, construction, design of a bathroom railing. Took them to the board. The board, gave us feedback and said, this is the style we like. I took that style, as you can see in the packet, and sent a letter out to the previous 4 vendors. And out of the 4 vendors, one of them replied with a new quote based on the feedback that you had given us as staff. And the quote, I received 2 quotes for the 2 different styles pictured in the packet. The one on the left, the simple, just vertical picket style railing is, thank you, or excuse me, and it's on the right in this picture, is the quote for $18,000 and change. Find it. I believe it's 18,063, yes. And then the second quote, when I went to get some follow-up information on it, I have the new quote for you that I set it there on the dais. That style has actually gone up. It is now $33,815.62.
That's got $2,000 in tax in it, so really it'd be $31,900, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, being that this is the only vendor who replied to the request of the board for the style and design that you wanted, I'm bringing these 2 to you to present to see what y'all would like to do moving forward.
Chair. The more expensive one is very nice, but basically what we're trying to do is keep people from falling off and hurting themselves. Price difference is significant. My vote would be to go with the lower price.
See, given the cost of these, I mean, we asked some particular vendors, but we haven't actually gone out for a public bid. Do we need to go out for a public bid, given the values here?
I thought this was.
Because we never published.
We submitted out to the original vendors that we got information from to begin with, and this is the only one that responded back for this meeting. Depending on which direction you want to go with the cheaper option or more expensive option, I don't know that we're going to get anybody else to bid right now.
I don't either. I'm just curious about the process, because if we didn't publish requesting bids, then are we violating our purchasing policy? So that's my first.
I don't think so, because we have the option We go out for 3 quotes.
Okay.
For the majority of our projects under a certain dollar amount. I believe this is under that dollar amount. And we can move forward with forward direction since we had other people not bid or not turn in any quotes.
Okay. My gut feeling is, I mean, and I understand about fiscally conservative, and I do, it's, almost twice the price. It's $14,000 more to do the nicer. It's just a matter of, the aesthetics in front of the building. That's got our name on it as a city, so, and it's a municipal building. There's a part of me that says it would be worth the extra decorative part, but I could go either way. Yeah.
Do we have options on the color other than just black and white?
The more stylish one on the left, yeah, it can be painted different colors.
Well, I just wonder if it were painted in the green that matches the details on that building. I thought that might look nice.
I can request them to have it painted a
I mean,
green.
that might just be me because my favorite color is green. So we need to get everybody else's opinion here, but I just think it might look nice down there.
Either of them could be painted green.
Right.
That would be an improvement, I think.
But, you paint the building too?
No. I just mean to paint the railing to match the green that's on the building.
So we would have to stick with the green in order to be able to.
You don't want to stick with the green? I like the green. But I mean, you make a good point, though. That could really corner us in terms of the color on the
It
building.
could, I mean, we could go with yellow and red for the business on the other side, too. But and I say that in jest.
It's. Thank you. I'm not Martha Stewart. It's a brownish gray charcoal aluminum color, just a standard color exterior railing.
So the pictures are mainly intended to show us the styles, and
Yes,
they could
ma'am.
be any color we wanted.
ma'am.
They could powder coat and whatever. Okay.
I don't know. They will be engineered though. I talked to Alan. He will want engineered plans. That way, if there is any issues, engineering has got it covered and the city does not have the liability.
Do we have information about how substantial, like up on our packets, they're reversed on what they are on the screen? So the more decorative one on the left on the screen, are those hollow or are they solid? And then the pickets on the other one that's less expensive, are they hollow or solid? Are they is one gonna really give away if somebody decides to kick it, versus the other? Do we know how substantial they are between the two?
The one on the right is going to be channel hollow aluminum. The one on the left, I'm sure the posts are going to be hollow, but probably 1/4 inch thick steel, while the pickets themselves are going to be solid.
That makes a big difference. In terms of how sturdy it would be. And it says on the purchase order here, engineering, if required, this is what we estimate it to cost us. So they're estimating $1,500 in engineering cost.
And I spoke to Alan, as a city, we're going to require engineering.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Does anybody else have questions?
It says the colors are either black or white, so it might be an additional cost if you change the color.
I could speak with them and we could work If green is the color too.
Well, it has to be a majority vote. It can't just be my preference, and that's okay. I'm okay with black, too. It looks lovely. It's charm.
You know, if the building does change roof colors or trim gets rechanged, you know, the black is the,
Right. Yeah, yeah. No, I would be fine with black. It looks
Yeah.
nice.
You got to go with a neutral color. You know, who knows what's gonna happen 5 years from now. The only thing I don't see is, a warranty on these. Is there any type of warranty on them?
I did not inquire about warranty, but I can.
I'm more inclined to go with something that's more substantial, and you telling me the posts are steel and the pickets are solid on the one that's on the left up there, the more expensive bid, I'm leaning that way. You know, it's the same way we're gonna have another item on the agenda about a sign, and the question's gonna be, I mean, we can get a sign for way less, but can we get one that's gonna last in the sun in a high visibility area in traffic that can, you know, it's like, what are you paying for? So, I would make a motion if no one has other discussion, but.
Could we get installation specs on these as well, in terms of how they will be fastened into the concrete? Do we know that, or are we still?
Yeah, that would come with the engineering.
Okay, okay,
Doesn't it? Yes.
yes.
I want to point out our purchasing policy.
Yes, ma'am.
It does say for items over $25,000, it must be received by sealed bid. And the problem with this is the cheaper one's under 25,000, this one's over.
Right.
If we go out for bid, this one's already been exposed to the public, so that creates a problem.
And we can't accept that without going out for bid, right?
It must be awarded based on sealed competitive
Yeah.
bidding unless exempt from bidding requirements and be approved by the city commission. I'm not sure what qualifies an exemption for it. I would have to look into that.
Should we ask the attorney for his advice before we move forward then?
I would.
Chair, I just noticed that $1,500 for shop, or for engineering, and $500 for shop drawings, which is not included in the 31,000, so that would be an additional cost that we would have to pay.
It is included in this one. It is. On the revised one that David put up here on in our place.
The total, the
Yeah.
cost is there, but the total, it's not
Yeah,
carried forward.
in the far right column.
Right.
Oh, I
So
see what you're saying.
That basically covers the tax that's included.
No, I see what you're saying, Linda, hang on.
I think we need an attorney's interpretation on that. So I propose that we table this until we find out for sure how we're moving, make sure we're legal.
As let's do that.
Okay.
I don't want
We
to,
have to vote on the table? I don't think so.
Okay.
I recommend that we table it and bring it back to the next meeting.
I'd rather be safe and do it that way than to.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda, discuss, consider, and act on a new sign for downtown High Springs.
Working, good, everybody saw their placemats. Working in conjunction with the signs that are being placed at the city limits, going with the same type of style, compatibility. We're looking at identifying with gateway signs entrances to downtown historic High Springs. Went to ThemeWorks, who is currently constructing the gateway signs at the city, the 6 gateway signs coming in, and spoke with Ryan, who's here this evening, and they were gracious enough to create a rendering for us, as you can see. This has been a project in the past. I think it started right before I took this job. I'm not sure how it got going, and I kind of kept it going. This will be placed at the clock island, what I call, right there, facing where the red line is, facing south to Newberry, coming in on 27. I would like for this to be the first of 4 signs, with looking at placing others coming in from Fort White, coming in from Alachua, and coming in from the interstate as you enter the downtown area. The sign is very nice. It should withstand a hurricane. It is aluminum. It has raised lettering on it. Ryan could tell you a little bit more about the construction of it, but it falls in line with what's being constructed and designed currently right now for the city, so that we have something that flows throughout the city. It would go with the current sign that's right behind City Hall at James Paul Park, has the same type of design with it. The quote for this current sign right here is, and Ryan just gave me this before the meeting, so I only have this one copy with me. We're looking at, for the design and construction of it, is $12,355. And I'd be happy to email this to you so that everybody can see what it is. I don't know if you want to pass that up so they can look at each of them for. Oh, all right, we do. Thank you. This would help identify High Springs, downtown High Springs. This is what we're known for, is our quaint downtown. And I believe this would help set it off.
Chair. Some time ago, when the Heart of High Springs brought forward the gateway signs, they discussed the sign in front of the clock. I thought this was part of what they were doing, is it not?
No, ma'am. From what I gather, and I know because I'm helping with the easement part of it, is the Heart of High Springs is purchasing 6 signs, which will be placed on the 6 roads coming into town.
Okay, I'm going to go back and listen to that conversation because I do remember it. Thank you.
Could this not be one of them? This is in addition to the other ones that the Heart of High Springs was going to install?
This is working in conjunction with them, and as far as keeping the compatibility of the signs looking similar in their style, but this is a separate project from what Heart of High Springs is doing. I don't know if I answered your question.
Why couldn't this be one of the ones that the Heart of High Springs did? I mean, if it were right there coming into town at the clock, then why not have that one there instead of a mile south, coming in from Newberry?
The current one coming in from Newberry is going to be placed just south of Tillman Acres, and it is much larger.
I know that sign very well, and I know it's not there anymore. So you're saying those signs would be bigger than this one?
Yes, those signs are much larger.
But those signs are going to be cheaper than this one, is that correct? Because I thought those were about $10,000 a piece.
Yes, Ryan. I'm going to have Ryan come speak on that. He knows the.
So David asked us to think about a sign that would, we have the signs coming into town to welcome you to High Springs, and then an additional sign to welcome you to the downtown historic district, to make it feel like you're arriving in a special part of town. The signs coming into town are less expensive. They are made out of solid PVC, the sign panel itself, and that's partially because you don't see the backside of those signs. So we can put a wooden brace across the back to reinforce the PVC, because this sign will be on that island and highly visible from both sides. We wanted to do something decorative on the back, and you can see that there's a silhouette of a locomotive on the back side of the sign. We could go to a PVC sign. It would save some, but it would interrupt the illustration on the back, so we probably wouldn't want to do that on the back anymore. Also, so we could make the sign less expensive by going to PVC. We'd probably have to do away with the thing on the back. And those signs were priced, the material cost and all of our expenses have continued to rise and rise. And those signs were priced before, materials have continued to escalate. Also, those signs were already designed. We were following a design that was already created by Festival Signs years ago, and we would just be redoing that. This is a unique design. This is a new design, and will require some original illustrations, and so that adds to the cost as well. Hopefully that we could provide a proposal for different options to show, sort of a high end or a low end estimate for this, if that'd be helpful.
Yes.
Ryan, you are involved in all kinds of design processes. So my question is, if this is to help establish place, like the historic district, is this sign that's 30 by 60 inches, is it too large for that little island?
That was one of the things that David and I discussed. This was an initial pass.
Okay.
We're not under contract to provide design or anything else, but being that this is our hometown and we wanted to help out, we had one of our designers work on it for a couple days to come up with this. But it's an initial pass. What we would do if we were actually going to move forward with it would be to create a mock-up of this sign that had the text and everything on there, and actually take it out to the island, since it's right down the road from us, and look at it and compare it to the size of the other, the clock. We don't want to compete with the clock. So I think it's likely that it'll get shorter, but we need to make it big enough to fit. If we're going to have all this text on there, it needs to be big enough to accommodate that text and be legible from a car driving by it, whatever the speed limit is there. 30,
Right.
30-ish.
Right.
30.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what I think. Since you're gonna be slowing down once you get into, because most of these signs are gonna be in the core of the city. Am I right, David?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I don't think it needs to be as large as the ones coming into town, because you're driving so much faster, you're gonna be able to see them. But once you get into town, the traffic don't slow down so much. Signs don't have to be as big, I don't think. Just to kind of.
Certainly agree with you on that. And we would never put this much text on one of those signs coming in to town, added to the National Register of Historic Places, because this sign can be viewed not only by cars driving through town, but also people walking along the streets. We wanted to, we took the opportunity to put some more stuff on there. And again, we can mock the sign up, changing the sign a small amount, the size of the sign is a small amount, probably won't affect the cost significantly, unless we get, 25% smaller, then we might be able to see some savings.
Yeah, 'cause, like the historic marker that's in front of the CRA building, that's on a single post, and it's different. I don't know, maybe we want to, but this matches the shape that we're using around the rest of the city, so there's a lot of reason to do that.
Yeah, I don't know if, I think most of you guys are pretty familiar with these signs, but this is the sign that we were sort of looking to be compatible with.
Do I have a motion? What you got, what's your pleasure? For what, how we want to move forward? Do we want to go with a mock-up?
What do you like about what you're seeing currently? So that we have a direction to go for a mock-up. As far as colors, fonts, style.
It's not green.
This sign is also aluminum. The only thing that potentially might need replacing years down the road will be the post. But this sign is one that's built to last.
Is this powder coated?
Paint.
It's painted?
But it's an acrylic polyurethane paint that we use in theme parks, Disney in particular, with a clear coat. So the paint should last for quite a while, but it's not powder coat. But if it were to be vandalized, it's a lot easier to fix a painted sign than a powder coated sign.
I'm in favor of moving forward. I like the idea of a sign there, even if we didn't have signs in other places. The price tag for that one little sign sticks with me. I mean, this is almost as much as that entire railing we were just talking about. Yeah. So.
I can appreciate that.
Yeah,
do realize
so
that
I guess I'm just, I think we should have a sign there by the clock identifying, where you're at, and I think I'd like to have it locally produced. So, I don't know, I don't think we want to authorize the money, but we want to look for revisions on the design, or what do we?
So if I can make a suggestion, as a member of the community, ThemeWorks being a member of the community, we are happy to give this design as it is to the city. And if you guys would like to use this to get competitive quotes, we'd be fine with that. Just to make sure that we're, just to keep us honest and make sure that we're not being extravagant, but.
I think folks up here like using the local business. I don't think
So-
that's an issue. It's just a lot of money.
We do realize it is a lot of money.
I think that's where I'm coming from too, is that tonight we've been spending a lot of money. And I really do think we need to just, I guess everybody's in consensus that we need a sign down there underneath the clock that says Historic District. But
Can we approach it from, what would the amount be that would be comfortable to the board, that so we can?
I think it's going to depend on the relative size. I mean, it's all relative to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not, it's not just a set number for me. It's what's it going to look like?
Sure.
If spending $12,000 is going to get us something that's just knock your socks off.
There's other things we can do to affect the cost.
Okay.
it's not
You
your
know-
cost. I firmly believe you're giving us the best price possible. It's just the cost, period.
Right,
Sure.
right.
Understood.
So how would you guys like to move forward? You would not?
No, I said I'm not.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to see a version that uses a single post. As you look at the size and you work on the scale, if a single post option that might be, 20 or 22 high by, 36 or something wide might look better there and substantially impact the cost, could you let us know that, or it wouldn't?
It probably will go into a single post, obviously wouldn't affect the cost very much because it's just a pressure treated lumber post. It would interfere with the illustration on the back. So if we were to abandon the illustration on the back and make the sign smaller so that it could be fit onto a 4x8 sheet of material sideways, we could realize some savings there. And I'd be happy to take a look at that and see what the difference in dollars would be. And I would send that to David, I assume.
The mayor mentioned about slowing down here in the city. We are also going to have lighting of the pedestrian crossing where people are going to significantly slow down because they'll have to. So that's something we can keep in mind as well.
So do we want to table moving forward on anything official until they come back with a little bit more based on our discussion tonight? Okay. I guess that's, all right. Thank you.
Thank you for your work on this.
appreciate it.
And helping us to have a nice downtown.
Okay, we need to adjourn our meeting so we can start with the next one. All right, meeting adjourned at 6:32.
Good evening. I call this High Springs City Commission meeting to order, June the 23rd, 2022, at 6:34. Madam Clerk, roll call. Here.
Here.
Commissioner Ambrose?
Here.
Commissioner Jones?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Here.
All right, thank you, ma'am. At this time, we have the invocation by Pastor Spivey. There he is. In the Pledge of Allegiance. There, he moved on me.
Let's pray. Holy Father, thank you for being our Father. God, thank you for loving us in spite of who we are and how we are sometimes. God, thank you for loving us. Thank you for loving those who don't even believe you exist. Thank you for blessing us each and every day. Thank you for being almighty and all-powerful, awesome and mighty. God, we come to you because you are the great I am, because you have gifts to give that nobody else can give. God, for our law enforcement, for our first responders, for those who protect us. God, we ask that you protect them. God, for your leaders, we ask that you give them guidance and strength and vision and wisdom. God, for us, we pray, Lord, that we will be good citizens and productive. God, that we'll love you more than anything else, and we'll put our neighbors above ourselves. Help us to do the things that you want us to do so that our community can be the best it can be. God, forgive us. Be with those who are fighting for us overseas. Be with those who have lost loved ones. Be with those that are healing from different and various illnesses. Help us to reflect your Son in all that we do and say. God, I ask that you bless this community. Help us to be what you want us to be. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, sir. At this time, we entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda. If we can, under new business, item number 6, if we can move it to number 1, under new business. Yeah,
Okay.
number 6, if we can take it and move it to number 1.
With that, I will make a motion that the agenda be approved as requested by the mayor.
I'll second that.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any other discussions? Hearing none, all in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, at this time, entertain a motion for the approval for the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, no special presentations. At this time, unfinished business. Discuss and consider act of ordinance, adopting ordinance 2021-06.
Mr. Mayor, this is ordinance number 2021-06, an ordinance of the City of High Springs, Florida, amending the text and future land use plan map series of the City of High Springs Comprehensive Plan as amended pursuant to an application CPA 21-01 of the City Commission under the amendment procedures established in sections 163.3161 through 163.3248 of the Florida statutes as amended, providing for deleting and replacing in its entirety the text and future land use plan map series, including the future land use plan map of the comprehensive plan based upon an evaluation completed by the city to reflect the changes in state requirements and local conditions pursuant to sections 163.3191 of the Florida statutes as amended, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. Appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2021-06 upon its reading by its entirety, by the title only.
Thank you, sir.
Sir.
All right, commissioners. It's a pleasure.
Can I?
Yes.
I don't have a question, but I'd just like to give kudos to everybody that worked on this plan, because it came back to us with no changes, nothing that had to be modified or whatsoever. And I say thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you that worked on it. It could have been a fiasco, but it turned out better than we all thought, I'm sure. So I say congratulations to you all.
Yes, sir. Any other discussion? Entertain a motion.
And since I said all of that, I'll make the motion. I make a motion that ordinance 20-2106 be approved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any other discussion? Anyone from the floor? No one rising. Madam Clerk? Yes.
Yes.
Rhodes?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Whites?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Moving on to item number 2, unfinished business. Discuss and consider the act of ordinance 2022-09.
Mr. Mayor, this is an ordinance of the City of High Springs, Florida, amending the City of High Springs Land Development Code as amended pursuant to an application LDC 22-02 by the City Commission relating to an amendment of the text of the Land Development Code, providing for revising Section 2.02.00 entitled Allowable Uses in Zoning Districts, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, providing effective date. Appropriate motion is passed. Ordinance number 2022-09 upon its reading by title only.
Thank you.
This is second reading of this, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any discussion? Any questions? Entertain a motion.
I move we pass ordinance 2022-09 as read on second reading.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Anyone from the audience? Any questions or comments? Hearing none, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
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 Commissioner Whites?
Yes.
Mayor Williams?
Yes. All right, thank you. Motion carries. All right, item number 3, discuss and consider act of ordinance 2022-10.
Mr. Mayor, this is an ordinance of the City of High Springs, Florida, amending the City of High Springs Land Development Code as amended pursuant to an application LDC 22-03 by the City Commission relating to the amendment of the text of the Land Development Code, providing for deleting in its entirety Section 6.01.02.02 entitled Regulations Governing Subdivision of Land, Certified Parcel Subdivisions, providing for adding a new Section 6.01.02.02 entitled Regulations Governing Subdivision of Land, Minor Replats, providing for adding a new Section 6.01.02.02.01 entitled Regulations Governing Subdivision of Land, Lot Reconfiguration, providing for deleting and replacing in its entirety the requirements of Section 6.01.01.07 entitled Regulations Governing Subdivision of Land, exemptions, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2022-10 upon its reading by title only.
Okay, we had the reading of the ordinance. Any discussion? Any questions? Commissioners? Hearing none, entertain a motion.
I move we pass ordinance 2022-10 as read on second reading.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the audience? Hearing none, Madam Clerk?
Rhodes?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Whites?
Yes.
Mayor Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor James?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. All right, item number 4, discuss and consider act of ordinance 2022-11.
Mr. Mayor, this is an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of High Springs, Florida, amending the City of High Springs Code of Ordinances, Chapter 54, entitled Peddlers and Solicitors, providing severability and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2022-11 as read by title only.
Okay, thank you, sir. Commissioner, any discussion? And I entertain a motion.
I move that we pass ordinance number 2022-11 as read.
Second?
Second. All right, Chief Shepherd?
Nope, if you had any questions on it, we had already went over this on the last time. It's still the same ordinance for the peddler and solicitor ordinance that basically revised and includes a background review, restrictions on time frame for solicitors, and designated area.
Just as a, Mayor,
Yes.
as a point of interest. Yesterday, my husband answered the door and went outside and talked with this young man who wanted to talk to him about solar panels. And he asked him, did he have a permit? And he said, no, sir. He said, do you have any identification? He said, no, sir. He said, did you notice the sign up front of Edgemore that says no solicitation? No, sir. He said, you better leave because there is an ordinance in town that you must have a permit and identification before you come through soliciting. He said, besides the fact that we have one at the front. That guy took a, Bob said he was, man, he was gone.
Glad it's
So
effective.
we now have something.
All right, we had a motion and a second. Any question from the audience? Any comments from the audience? All right, here now, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Yes.
Mayor Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor James?
Yes.
Commissioner Ambrose?
Yes.
All right, motion carries. All righty. Moving on to citizens' requests and comments for issues not on the agenda. Please state your name for the record and limit your comments to 5 minutes, please. If anyone would like to speak on something not on the agenda, you may do so at this time. Seeing no one rising, we are moving on to new business. Okay, at this time, the new business item number 6. Okay, discuss and consider the acting agreement with Maurice McDaniel for special magistrate service.
Oh, are we up? Are we supposed to?
We added,
I'm
Is
sorry.
someone else first? Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. We moved some up. That's okay. That's okay. Give us a second. We get that in a second. Won't take long. Yes.
Mayor, would you like me to kind
Yes.
of tell what this is about? So this is the contract for the magistrate, and it is with Maurice, and it is for we would pay them $1,600 a month minimum for 8 hours a month at $200 an hour. And then after 6 months, we would have an evaluation whether we needed to increase or decrease hours, and we could terminate the contract without cause.
Okay. All right, commissioners, any questions?
And you've indicated that we have a lot of code enforcement that has stopped at this point because we do not have a magistrate, correct?
Right, and there's a backlog, so I anticipate needing more than the 8 hours a month to get us caught up.
Okay.
But then long-term, it could end up only 8 hours or less a month. But right now, I anticipate spending more than the $1,600 a month to get caught up.
Okay, and then, under the termination section, and depends on, it looked like first, in most cases, if we were having an issue, we'd make notification, you have an opportunity to correct that. But there is the option to terminate without clause, but in which case, then his work would be done immediately, correct?
Right, we could approve the contract if all are in favor with something that all existing cases, that he would continue with those, and then we would, with a smooth transition taking place if we
Mr.
decided
Mayor,
to
on
terminate.
that particular issue, I know Maurice for a number of years, and if the city, for whatever reason, said, okay, we're gonna go back to a citizen board or something like that, so we're gonna change your services that are needed, and if there was an order that he was drafting based upon a prior, I know he'll finish it. He just out of his own ethics, if nothing more, it'll get done. It's just, I think that issue would not be something to worry about with Maurice.
Okay, thanks.
Not an issue, Maurice?
I've been a resident here for 6 years or so. I have a law practice downtown. I would not want to put my city in a position to have a hard time transitioning if that ever became a problem.
All right, thank you. Okay. Any other questions? All right, entertain a motion.
I move that we approve and I have the other one up in front of me, that we approve the contract with Maurice McDaniel for special magistrate services.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Anyone from the audience, any questions or comments? Seeing no one rising. All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Welcome both. Thank you, sir.
Look forward to serving. Thank you.
Thank you.
Got a new job.
I'm sorry, long overdue.
Got a new job.
Long overdue. All right. Okay, ladies. New business,
New business.
number one.
Mayor Williams and Commissioners, thank you so much for having us back. I'm Joy Glanzer, Chair of the Newberry Opioid Task Force, and with me is Charlene and Sherry also. Our mayor, he's on our task force as well, and he sends his regrets. He's in Scotland. He's touring other people's children, showing them the world, so we wish him well, but he wishes he could be here. So a few months ago, we came to you and...
No, he doesn't.
Oh, you're right. I lied. I'm sorry.
Wouldn't you rather be in Scotland?
A few months ago, we came to you and expressed the dire situation in the world with the opioid crisis in Alachua County. At the time, we were number 2 in the state for opioid abuse, and actually number 1 for adolescent suicide. So the Newberry Commission formed the task force to address this, and our mission is to raise awareness on the issue. And as it grew, we realized that the issue doesn't remain in Newberry. Of course, it's all throughout the county. And we came to all the municipalities, and at that time, the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act funds, had come out, and one of the line items on there is for mental health and drug abuse and those kind of things. So we came to you asking for $10,000 from your ARPA funds, and we had a great plan, but no detail, not so many details. And so tonight, I'm excited to talk about the details. In front of you, you have the interlocal agreement from the Children's Trust of Alachua County. They so graciously agreed to be our administrative agent, because one of the issues we were facing was with all the smaller municipalities, you know, not everybody wanted to just pay Newberry all this money and have us be in control of it. So what's going to happen now with this interlocal agreement is that the trust will actually set the agenda, they'll have the checkbook, and when we set this up, each municipality that has contributed to the fund will have appoint one representative. That can be a citizen in your community, or it can be someone from your board. And the meetings will be called hopefully on a monthly basis. It will be up to the Children's Trust how it is, how it looks, so to speak. But tonight we're here to ask you to sign the interlocal agreement and agree to join us in this fight on opioid abuse. You'll be the third one. So far it's been unanimous because no one can disagree with this issue, and we're all working towards making a safer community. One other thing I wanted to mention was that Newberry has given $15,000, and that went directly to the RAD Kids program. It's an elementary school program that empowers youth to say no, to be able to understand and take care of their own bodies. But it's going to start in the fall. We're fully funded, and all the seats are almost filled for all the instructors. So High Springs School will see this in their school, and it will make a difference. But anyway, if you have any questions, I'm happy we're here to answer them.
I'm fully on board. You and I talked the other day because I wanted to make sure that the Children's Trust was in line with what you were doing when you came to us a year or so ago.
Okay.
And I listened to those podcasts that they have, and I'm sure they still have them. I just haven't had time to tune in on them. And but you see it on TV every day in the news. You know how many people, mostly kids, I think, because they don't realize what they're taking. That one pill can kill them. But when you hear parents talk about this, and I remember hearing one mother who had lost 2 children to the same thing. It's devastating, and we've got to do something about it. The fentanyl they're taking, it's not the same fentanyl that's legally given to people in pain. It's manufactured in China, and it's dangerous, and we do have to do something, and I would be willing to volunteer my time to serve on the board unless someone else has a desire to do so as well. Thank you. So
the program for kids that Newberry's doing is going to start in the fall.
We're hoping in the fall. Be trained late summer, and it's up to the elementary schools to have it on their curriculum. Some of them may need to start in, January. That won't be up to us, but they'll all be trained and ready to start in the fall.
Okay, so but these funds might be used for efforts that are greater than the scope of a program targeted at elementary.
Correct. There's two separate, totally separate things. The Rad Kids Fund, and that whole project is strictly from that $15,000. It will go into all the communities, but that was paid by Newberry. The $10,000 being invested by each small municipality will go into the awareness campaign. Our motto is from silence to solutions, and we just have to find out how to find our voice. And so that money, it may be radio, billboards, print, advertising, whatever it is, we're going to, all the municipalities will be making that decision on how that money will be spent in your community.
Media awareness.
And bring it to the awareness campaign, that's what we call it. So yeah, these are two separate things. You won't have to pay into the Rad Kids Fund. That's already taken care of.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, my business has contributed to what you've done and what have you. So
thank you.
I believe in what you're doing. I know this is an issue. I took the Narcan out of my car because it's too hot, but I have it by my front door and often have it with me at different events that my company's involved in. So I understand the issue, and the more I look at the media, a lot of the problem is the fact that, whether we like it or not, people do use drugs, and kids do experiment, young people. And the problem is the drug supply has just become contaminated, and so people don't know what they're taking, and that's where a lot of these things happen. So I just am really in favor, if we're going to move this forward, that we're really targeting, high school and middle school youth and people who are out in the community to understand, that this is a real issue, and there are real risks to doing some things that might not have been so risky previously. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I might share with you a story that the mayor told us. He's a school teacher in high school, and he said this awareness campaign is so important. For example, he would tell his students, we're going to raise awareness about opioids, and they would say, what are opioids? He did not get the same response when he would say, tobacco causes cancer. So we think the kids know what it is. We think it, but they just maybe think it's another drug. So you're right. And this isn't the be-all, end-all, but they say we have to do something. So this is something, and it's a start. So, thanks.
Mr. Mayor, I did talk to Bob Swain, who's an assistant county attorney and also serving as attorney for the Children's Trust. And he would like to add a provision to the agreement that allows for the Children's Trust to do the RFPs and the procurement process, and just add a little provision in the agreement that doesn't change the nature of the agreement at all. And I said I don't have a problem with that, but we don't have the language to add. It probably will be an addendum to this agreement is what I'm anticipating. So you can pass it tonight contingent upon that little add-on provision, if you'd like to do so.
I would just like to add that my daughter was one of those students. She graduated Newberry High School last year, and she knows Jordan Marlowe very well. And I knew him when his son came to him with a conversation that he had heard in elementary school that put this on his heart, and he's very passionate about it, and I believe in his commitment to the whole community, everybody. So I fully support this.
Much ladies, and one step leads to two steps. So thank y'all so much. All right, commissioners.
I think Linda wants this one.
Yes,
Okay.
I'd love to. I would like to make a motion to pass the interlocal agreement between local governments in Alachua County and the Children's Trust of Alachua County regarding opioid awareness campaign and awareness campaign committee.
I'll second.
Okay, with the amendment.
Yes,
The amendment to allow the
include the
procurement.
amendment when it arrives.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. You second it? Mm-hmm. All right. All right, now you think you volunteered already to be on the board, so
Right.
we good to go.
Got it.
All righty. Anyone from the audience? Any questions? Any comments from the audience? No one? All right. The motion is, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. I'm sorry, Chief Chef, I see you standing up there. You didn't have anything to say, did you? I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Do everything. They covered all the elements, so you're good.
Okay, thank you. All righty, moving on to item number 2. Discuss and consider act on LDC 2020-04 and ordinance 2022-15.
Mr. Mayor, this is an ordinance of the City of High Springs, Florida, amending the City of High Springs Land Development Code as amended pursuant to an application LDC 22-04 by the City Commission relating to an amendment of the text of the Land Development Code providing for amending Table 2.01.01 entitled Future Land Use Zoning District Compatibility by adding an AG Agricultural Zoning District and deleting the references to RM Mixed Residential, TND Traditional Neighborhood Development, and TCBN Traditional Town Center Zoning Districts, providing for amending Section 2.01.04.01 entitled Conservation Districts by renaming the title to read Conservation and Agricultural Districts, and by adding an AG Agricultural Zoning District, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2022-15 as read by title only. And Mr. Mayor, this is a legislative procedure.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
There are other items on the agenda having to do with the Duke Energy that would be on agricultural zoning, and I have a conflict of interest after discussion with the attorney and the State Ethics Board with the Duke Energy items. And the Ethics Board has indicated that they also would recommend I not vote on this issue, even though it's legislative, because it precedes the issues directly relating to Duke Energy. So I'll be abstaining but participating in the discussion for items 2, 3, 4, and 5. And the specific conflict I have, which I'm supposed to disclose, is that apparently the contractor for Duke Energy is contracted with my company for services on that property. So there would be a direct financial gain to my business.
Mr. Mayor, my advice is to abstain. Clearly, that's what I would, and I did talk with one of the attorneys at the Commission on Ethics, and his view is probably a little more conservative than I did, because this is a legislative matter that governs the entire city, not just one property. And we're creating an ag district. But I certainly understand the advice that is given by the attorney on the Council on Ethics, and I understand that. So I think out of an abundance of caution, I think the conflict is very tangential at best, but out of an abundance of caution, I've made that advice to Commissioner Ambrose.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you for closing that. Okay. All righty, commissioners. Any discussion? Yes.
Would you like me to go over what this consists of? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so this would be an ordinance creating the ag district. It's referenced in the comprehensive plan, the former one and the new one, and we really need to create it. It's basically the text part, and it impacts the future land use compatibility table. Basically, under ag district, what it says is that an ag district will consist of areas that are rural and agricultural in nature, and non-residential low-intensity uses, such as cultivation of crops, cattle grazing, activities related to ecotourism and outdoor recreation. Solar and renewable energy is included in that because by state statute, it is included in all ag districts. As per residential, in the ag district, it is 1 dwelling unit per 5 gross acres. The impact to the future land use compatibility table, we only included the future land use that is ag that the only compatibility would be zoning that is ag. And the reason why was we didn't want to, anywhere we put ag, solar power facilities are allowed by right. So if we put ag as other compatible uses, then the commission wouldn't have the ability to decide if you wanted them or not in the other zoning categories. That's why we kept it only in the ag. At the same time, we deleted in the future land use compatibility table, residential mix, traditional town center, and traditional neighborhood development zoning categories because currently they're not fully written in the land development code, they're not in the zoning map, and they're not used. So basically, it was something that was put in the land development code partially, and is as such, they're not able, we don't use them. So we took them out. So, and staff is recommending it because, again, it's referenced in both. It needs to be done. Also, the closest zoning to this would be the rural residential. The argument definitely could be made that since we don't have the ag district created, that is something that the commission would need to consider. It's a gray area whether you'd have to allow it by right or not. Again, that's an attorney question more than from me, but the argument could be made that since we don't have ag, you really would need to permit it in rural residential, and if you did, then it would open up solar to all rural residential. So that is why we thought it was important. Another reason it's important to create the ag district now.
The way the manager and your planning staff have crafted this provision is very similar to the uses permitted by the county. They have 1 to 5 dwelling units per 5 acre, 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres. That's the same intensity that the county has. So now, as we'll talk later in the meeting, when you annex property and it has a zoning category by the county, until such time as you exercise your governance, your zoning authority over that property, it retains the original zoning category of the county. And it can be very difficult and confusing for planning staff to apply rules that are not our rules. They're the county rules. And so applying that becomes a very difficult situation. So this is very similar in nature to the use that it already has in the designation. And now we can apply city rules to that property.
Commissioner,
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What rules do we not have? I mean, what's going to change if it's county ag now and it becomes city ag? We don't have an agricultural zoning district, so what rules do we even have to apply?
Well, you would have to apply, if it stayed county ag, you would have to apply the county rules. So you'd go into their land development code and you would say, okay, these are the provisions that have to be applied to this particular land. And that becomes somewhat complex because we don't typically do that. So that's where generally speaking, you apply your city code as opposed to a county code to the city lands.
But if we don't have an agricultural district yet, what code do we have to apply?
The counties.
So we would just absorb all of the counties?
That's right.
So we're still going to be
It doesn't.
using their frame of reference regardless?
Well, it would stay ag because it's zoned ag now.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the zoning category. And if some application came before you to utilize that property and you had not exercised zoning authority over that property, then you apply county rules and regulations to that property. It still stays ag. It's just a different
understand that.
jurisdiction. Now, what the intent of this is to create an ag zone property for this in the city that we can apply our own rules to that property.
Yeah, so what we're basically doing is creating an ag district for the whole
That's
city,
right.
so that when there's properties that come in, that it makes more sense to be ag than rural residential. And so basically our rural residential has been used as ag, and it's really not, some of the properties that have come in, it's not appropriate. Properties that are coming in with less residential uses really should be ag. So we're just trying to do things correctly and do things right.
So for the purposes of this evening, obviously where we have later on the agenda stuff to discuss, if we as a city decided within agricultural districts we wanted to exercise some kind of X, Y, or Z ordinance, would we be able to apply those ex post facto after this has already been submitted? Say, for instance, a
yes.
vegetative buffer, a
So-
minimum vegetative buffer
Yes.
of
Yes.
400 feet.
Yes.
Would we be able to apply that after we've already received an application?
Well, if you're changing buffering requirements and it's not in your existing land development regulations, I don't think that you can do that. I think that would be somewhat problematic. In other words, there's an application in play, and you make certain approvals based upon that application, and then change the regulations. I don't think you can do that, if I'm answering your question. Commissioner
Yeah, I
Woods.
think you are. I mean, the whole point I'm trying to make is we've got an application already in play before we've had a chance as a city to get our ducks in a row in terms of what we want to see, how we want to protect our citizens. So I'm just trying to understand what our position is legally to be able to advocate on behalf of people who live here after we've already received a permit application.
I think you have to apply the rules that you have now to an application that is in process.
And that would be.
So ex post facto rules would not be appropriate.
And that doesn't surprise me. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Commissioners? Entertain a motion.
I move that we accept ordinance 2022-15 as read.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any questions from the audience? Questions or comments from the audience? Seeing that, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Mayor Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor James?
Yes.
Commissioner Ambrose?
Abstain.
Oh, that's right. Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Commissioner Ambrose, there's a form for you
Yeah, for
to
National
file
Day.
as well.
You got it. Boy, you on top of your game, aren't you?
What is the number of the form? It used to be Form 8, I think.
Form 8B.
8B?
B as in boy.
Okay, moving on to item number 3 on the new business.
Mr. Mayor, this will also be a legislative item, and I'll read this by title only. This is ordinance number 2022-14, an ordinance of the City of High Springs, Florida, amending the future land use plan map of the City of High Springs Comprehensive Plan as amended, relating to an amendment of more than 50 acres of land pursuant to an application CPA 22-01 by the property owners of said acreage under the amendment procedures established under sections 163.3161 through 163.3248 of the Florida statutes as amended, providing for a change in the land use classification from county rural agricultural less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres to city AG agriculture less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of High Springs, Florida, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2022-14 upon its reading by title only. And of course, you have the options to move this to a date certain in the future. You have the option to pass it. You have the option to deny it. And again, this is a legislative determination on this matter. I'm sorry.
All right, thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we have the applicant Duke Energy here, and CHW is representing them. So this is basically a change to the land use map. It would change it from county rural agricultural to city rural agricultural. It's on 735 plus or minus acres. It is south of Northwest 174th Avenue in the southwestern quadrant of the city. To the north, south, and west of the property is county rural ag. To the east of the property is city rural residential, and the applicant Duke Solar Power Facility is here to talk about the project.
Thank you and good evening. Mayor, members of the commission. And the CHW professional consultants. And we're now amplified. Thank you. I'm glad you're back with the fire truck too. Long drive. We're here tonight to talk about a land use amendment on a little over 700 acres that has been annexed into the corporate limits of the city of High Springs. And I have 3 presentations tonight. And I know this will be a little bit difficult because people always want to talk about details about certain things that may happen on land. But at this particular juncture, we are talking specifically about the item of placing the city of High Springs land use on that property that has been brought into the corporate limits of the municipality of High Springs. As so, we are looking at taking land that had previously Alachua County agricultural land use and replacing it now with your category of agricultural land use. We feel that the opportunities presented promote the long-term compatibility of uses by placing agricultural land use at the edge of the municipal limits, which is the lowest intensity development that is possible in most of the 67 counties in Florida and 410 municipalities of 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres and allowing agricultural type uses. It also helps retain the long-term viability of an area to have those low density residential and agricultural uses such as farming, silviculture, and other by right uses in the agricultural land use category at that edge. And if you think about it, as cities grow, they grow from the edge outward mostly, unless they're filling in a little enclave here and there. So you're generally taking in agricultural land uses at the peripheral edge. So this first request before you tonight is to replace Alachua County rural ag with City of High Springs ag land use upon the property. The property sits at the western edge of the corporate limit of the City of High Springs. And as you can see from the map here, it is abutting and the annexation has been legally approved, and that has concluded and did so at the end of last year. As a enlargement, you can see that this area here, our mapping of this area maps it out at about 701 acres. Actually, the survey is 711. It's listed in your agenda as 735 because those numbers came from the property appraiser's roll cards. So just for clarification, by survey, this comes out to 711 actual physical surveyed acres on the ground. The timeline associated with this process is back in 2021, we began to meet with your professional staff in the fall, and the annexation was submitted. It was complete in November, and then in December, prior to the end of last year, we submitted large-scale comprehensive plan amendments for map amendments to your future land use map, and then also we submitted a zoning application last year. In the process of the application's review, your consultants, Kimley Horn, came up with a new land use classification, that being ag, as opposed to the rural residential that was previously out here. So we amended our applications to be consistent with the plan amendments that you all addressed earlier in your agenda tonight. So the applications represent an agricultural land use to an agricultural land use switch. A week ago, we were here in front of your Planning and Zoning Board where they heard all 3 items, the land use, the zoning, and the site plan, and recommended unanimously that you move forward with taking this amendment and forwarding it to the Department of Economic Opportunity in Tallahassee for their objections, recommendations, and comments report. We were pleased to get that unanimous recommendation last week, and we hope for the same this evening. So effectively what would happen is this is a copy of the future land use map, and we have both the City of High Springs land use and we have Alachua County land use. You can see it's the light mint green there,
And the request is to go from the county's light mint green to a new agricultural category that you have created in your comprehensive plan of agriculture. So again, it's going from a low density, 1 unit per 5 acres and all agricultural uses to city agriculture. The Regional Planning Council, functioning as staff support to you all, have issued their concurrency management assessment, and in every category across the concurrency management assessment, the professional staff at the Regional Planning Council, where I used to work 20 years ago for the first 12 years of my career, have assessed potable water impacts, sanitary sewer impacts, solid waste impacts, drainage impacts, impacts to recreation, traffic impacts, impacts on affordable housing, impacts on historic resources, impacts on flood-prone areas, impacts on wetlands, minerals, soil types, and then lastly, high aquifer groundwater recharge. And under all elements of your comprehensive plan, the Regional Planning Council have found that this application for a land use change proposes no detriment to any of the level of service capable areas in your comprehensive plan. Therefore, the request that's before you, and as stated in your ordinance, to the Plan Board, serving as the local planning agency, they have determined and found that the application for amendment as described below to be compatible with the land use element, objectives, and policies, and those other affected elements of the comprehensive plan, which really means that the change is unified and it is approvable across all elements of the comprehensive plan. And therefore, the Plan Board, serving as the local planning agency, determined and found that the approval of said application for a land use map amendment as described below in your ordinance would promote the public health, safety, morals, order, comfort, convenience, appearance, prosperity, and general welfare of the community. So with that brief presentation, we are respectfully requesting that the City of High Springs Commission, based on the Plan Board's unanimous recommendation, the City Commission approve the requested large-scale comprehensive plan amendment, Resolution PBLPA 2201, and forward the amendment to the State of Florida's Department of Economic Opportunity under the required expedited review process of the State of Florida. And we are here to answer any questions you may have this evening. I am here with our client, Ms. Vanessa Ann Goff, and she is the project coordinator for Duke, so if you'd like to ask any questions, we're both here to speak on it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Any questions? Comments?
I don't know if anyone listened to the Plan Board meeting earlier in the week, or was it last week? I get confused.
Last
these days.
Tuesday.
Last week. It was excellent. They went through this, the citizens were there, they expressed their views. I learned more during that meeting than I had at any meeting we've had, because they really got into the nitty-gritty. It took me 2 days to get through it, but it was very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we do have comments that the Plan Board brought up, as well as comments from citizens, and those will be in the next PowerPoint because we wanted to address everything that was heard and responded to at the Plan Board. But it was a great meeting. We were very impressed by the astute research that they had done, the quality of the questions brought forward by the Plan Board, and their direction. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, entertain a motion.
I move that we approve ordinance number 2022-14 as read.
Have a motion and a second. Anyone from the audience, any questions? Any comments? All right, seeing that, Madam Clerk?
Mayor Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor James? Commissioner Ambrose?
Abstain.
Abstaining. Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. All right, moving to item number 4.
Mr. Mayor, this is an ordinance of the City of High Springs, Florida, amending the official zoning map of the City of High Springs Land Development Code as amended, relating to the rezoning of more than 10 contiguous acres of land pursuant to an application Z22-02 by the property owners of said lands, providing for rezoning from county agricultural to city AG agricultural of certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of High Springs, Florida, repealing all ordinances in conflict, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. Mr. Mayor, the appropriate motion at the appropriate time will be to pass ordinance number 22-16 As read by title only, you have the option to deny it. You have the option to move it to a date certain in the future. Now, this matter is quasi-judicial, so anyone that anticipates testifying about this particular matter will need to be under oath and will follow the procedures that we have per our quasi-judicial procedure. So at this time, if anyone anticipates speaking to the matter, including Ms. Ashley, because she's part of our planning staff, if you'll raise your right hand and we'll swear you in. Jenny, do you want me to swear?
That's fine.
If you'll say your first name, we'll start with you, Jerry.
Jerry?
Ashley.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you. And give your full name when you come to the podium. And Mr. Mayor, with that, city staff has received the application, and if you want to go first, Ashley, or we can have the applicant go first, whatever your preference is.
Mine is really simple because Jerry is so in-depth, I didn't feel like I had to do too much. But basically, just the overview, it's the rezoning from county ag to city ag as discussed. North, south, and west of the property is county ag. East is R1. There is a neighborhood to the east, which is 2 parcels that touch. And so staff is obviously, we think is compatible going from county ag to city ag. So I'll let Jerry talk about whatever else he wants to add.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, again, my name is still Jerry Diedenbach, CSW Executive Vice President. Thank you. Thank you again. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Commission, Madam City Manager, and Mr. City Attorney. We are here now under a quasi-judicial item for a rezoning, which is a site-specific rezoning to your zoning atlas. And this presentation will seem very similar because it is really paralleling the map amendment to the property. So under this one, many of the same things that we stated previously, that we believe that this promotes both the short and long-term compatibility of uses and consistent development pattern at the edge of the city by placing zoning that is agricultural at your edge, which is abutting then county agriculture throughout the rural area. We also believe that this helps preserve the long-term viability of those areas. And again, we will be talking more specifically during the site plan, which is the next application before you, about specificity of what would happen on this particular property. But this is a map amendment. So this request is to take the county's agricultural land use compatible ag zoning now and replace this with City of High Springs agricultural zoning. So it is a like-kind transfer of agriculture to agriculture. Again, this map shows the edge of the City of High Springs and the corporate limits with the area that has been annexed into the city. And this is an enlargement that shows the 700 plus acres at the edge. And it follows the same timeline. We began last fall and we annexed this property with your approval into the City of High Springs. I believe at one of those meetings, one of the commissioners said, is this going to be okay? And I stated, yes, it was fine. The county issued a letter. We responded to that. Mr. Walker affirmed the testimony that I provided as well as that of the Regional Planning Council, and that ended up just fine and concluded. Last week at your planning board meeting, the Planning and Zoning Board heard the item and under the quasi-judicial proceeding unanimously recommended that the City Commission move forward and place agricultural zoning upon this property. So tonight we are here requesting that you do the same and take your plan board's recommendation and staff recommendation and Regional Planning Council recommendation and place agricultural zoning upon the property. This will require 2 readings and it will not finalize until after the land use comes back from the state of Florida's Department of Economic Opportunity and the land use is actually closed. So what this looks like on the map is this area on the western perimeter of the city limits will go from Alachua County's rural agricultural category, which today is the light mint with the letter A and it is bracketed county. It will change to city agriculture. So very similarly, all the provisions of the Alachua County Agricultural Zoning District will transfer over. I won't read these in detail, but as stated in the future land use map amendment, the Regional Planning Council's research and analysis of the applications demonstrated that across all of the areas of your comprehensive plan and the various elements, that none of the changes proposed will present any detriment to the level of service of any of the categories contained in the comprehensive plan. This one adds a little bit because this is a quasi-judicial proceeding. And in your actual ordinance that's before you, there are several items that the planning agency and your staff reviewed in the course of this application. I am going to take a moment and read these because these are important, and we'd like to give you an answer of what those are to these A through N, so bear with me for just a moment. In the ordinance, it says, whereas the plan board, serving as the local planning agency, has studied and considered the items enumerated in section 11.14.02.03.2 of the Land Development Code, and based upon said study and consideration has determined and found that, number A, or letter A, the proposed changes will not be contrary to the land use plan and it would not have an adverse effect on the comprehensive plan. And in response to that, agricultural zoning fits on top of agricultural land use. And so those are compatible use types. And so item A is a match. Letter B, the proposed change is compatible with the existing land use pattern in the area. And as your city manager, Ms. Thanos, stated, all the land use and all the zoning that's out here in the rural area, in the Alachua County area, is agricultural land use and agricultural zoning. By making this change, it is consistent with the land use pattern and the zoning pattern found in the western portion of Alachua County and at your corporate limits. Letter C, the proposed change will not create an isolated district unrelated to adjacent or nearby districts. So it is surrounded, as Mr. Thanos stated in the beginning, to the north, south, east, and west. Those areas have agricultural type uses on them. So it is consistent, and what we say in planning language is it has a logical nexus because it is abutting the same type of a zoning pattern. Letter D, the proposed change will not result in a population density pattern and increase or overtaxing of the load on public facilities such as schools, utilities, and streets. And by creating a like type exchange of 1 unit to 5 acres to 1 unit per 5 acres, you're not proposing any increase in density or intensity upon the property by the proposed zoning change. Letter E, the proposed district boundaries are not illogically drawn in relation to the existing conditions on the property proposed for the change. What that is saying is that it's not a mishmash or it's not a mosaic of different zonings. It is merely a single zoning pattern that is placed upon a single land use pattern, and it matches the context area. Letter F, the proposed change or changing conditions make the passage of the proposed amendment necessary. In here, in letter F, you have annexed this property into the corporate limits of the city of High Springs. Moments ago, you placed High Springs land use on it. So now the only thing that can go upon that is High Springs agricultural zoning. So that condition is satisfied. Letter G, the proposed change will not adversely affect the living conditions in the neighborhood. All of the rights and privileges that were afforded in the previous Alachua County zoning classification are being mirrored in your new agricultural zoning. So it doesn't change the way people will react out there or the way that people can utilize their land. Letter H, the proposed change will not create or excessively increase traffic congestion or otherwise affect public safety. And again, because no greater density or intensity is offered by an agriculture to an agricultural change, there is no increased potential for traffic. Letter I, the proposed change will not create a drainage problem. Overall, the area has well-drained sandy type soils. There are no wetlands upon the property, and so we do not see any change in the drainage pattern because no excessive or intensive development is being proposed upon the property. It will stay effectively as an agricultural type use. Letter J, the proposed change will not seriously reduce light or air to the adjacent areas. And as I stated a week ago to your Planning and Zoning Board, this is really dealing with urban type situations where somebody may in a zoning build something that's very tall or may change the wind pattern by creating a stadium or a skyscraper, or something that would cast shadow upon adjacent properties or change the airflow through the area. That will not happen in an agriculture to agricultural like-kind exchange. Letter K, the proposed change will not adversely affect property values in the adjacent area. And this really gets to the fact that if somebody was getting a zoning change that would place an industrial use next to a residential neighborhood, or place something like, a slaughterhouse or large-scale intensive industrial next to a residential area, that would be something that would be considered. But here, it is an agriculture to an agricultural like-kind exchange. Letter L, the proposed change will not be a detriment to the improvement or development of adjacent property in accord with the existing code. And this is something that we always hear during zonings. What will this do to my property next door? The effect of a map change affects adjacent properties in no way other than the fact that they are having a different zoning classification next to them. If there was something intensive that was being proposed that was different from the pattern, that might be viable. But since, again, this is an agricultural zoning to an agricultural zoning change from county to city, there is no detriment to property values. Letter M, the proposed change will not constitute a grant of special privilege to an individual owner as contrasted with the public welfare. This really deals specifically with spot zoning. If somebody comes in and states that they want to put a restaurant on the corner, but everything else around it is conservation or a neighborhood, this provision prevents the action of spot zoning. This is not spot zoning because it is a consistent pattern with all the abutting zoning area and the edge of the city. And then lastly, I almost went through the entire alphabet here. Letter N, the proposed change is not out of scale with the needs of the neighborhood or city. And so again, in a like-kind exchange, you are not granting greater intensity or density to the property, and it still would have a 1 unit per 5 acre right to it, and all of the similar allowed uses that would be in the county's agricultural zoning will now be imparted by city agricultural zoning. So with that lengthy bit, and I'm sorry I had to go through that, but this is a different proceeding, being a quasi-judicial, based on the competent substantial evidence that's been presented in the application materials, the Regional Planning Council's concurrency report, the city resolution before you, the presentation, and the Plan Board's unanimous approval, we are respectfully requesting that the City of High Springs Commission approve the requested rezoning under RZ 2202 and replace the county agriculture with city agricultural zoning. And again, we're here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Any questions?
So, Mr. Mayor, there's nobody that has filed a petition for intervenor status, but if anybody wants to ask questions, of course, the commission can start with the questions, and then if anybody in the audience desires to ask questions of Jerry, they certainly have the opportunity at this time to do so as well. It's called cross-examination in here, but obviously we're not in a court of law, even though we kind of have this quasi-judicial thing placed upon us.
Mr. Walker somewhat examined me a week ago. Gave me kind of a rundown of the questions.
Any questions? Cross-examination.
Yes, sir, if I may, please. Will you be, on the next item, rereading items G, J, and K? Or will those only be presented now?
Those are being presented now, and we can go over G, J, and K.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I concur that going from county agricultural to city agricultural, I concur with all of those points. But as of last year, this isn't your grandmother's agricultural district anymore. And I guess I would argue that we are proposing eventually an industrial use.
Be happy to, Mr. Mayor. Yes. Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
You talk about the logical nexus with the rezoning. And I feel like that logical nexus kind of ignores the residential neighborhood directly to the east. That's not a logical nexus to me. Just in that portion, you know, where it's directly abutting a residence. I guess I don't agree with that.
So if I could, Mr. Mayor, respond a little bit to that. You are always going to have an area where there are transitional adjacencies across the zoning map. And if I could step over here, I promise, here, that's wireless, I can take that with me. So I'm pointing from the left side of the map toward the east side, and I want the audience to be able to see. There will always be times where you have different zoning categories abutting other categories. As you transition from the most rural areas into the urbanized areas, you will have areas of contiguous boundary where there's change, whether it's here or whether it's residential next to industrial. Now, this is not spot zoning, of course, because this is the city's wastewater treatment facility. But as you can see coming up 2741, the real question is whether the abutting logical nexus is creating a different set of circumstances. And as stated during this item and the previous item, High Springs' previous comprehensive plan had a rural agricultural type land use on it. If you read the text of that, basically all of the things that were allowed in that rural area were effectively agricultural in nature. So what is being proposed on this is less intense than what one might do closer to the city. So you meet the logical nexus because to the north, the west, the south, and here to the southeast, you have complementary zoning patterns. They will not always be the same because there will be places on the either future land use map or on the zoning map where you transition from zone to zone. But this is really getting to the heart of kind of how you up zone toward the core and down zone toward the perimeter.
Any other questions? All right, entertain a motion.
I move that we approve ordinance number 2022-16 as read.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone from the audience, questions, comments? All right, seeing no one move. All right, Madam Clerk.
Mayor James?
Yes.
Commissioner Ambrose has abstained. Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Whites?
Yes.
Mayor Williams?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. All right, moving on to item number 5 in the new business.
Kevin, can you put the site plan up there that I emailed you? That's okay. You can just keep his. I'll just kind of go over mine, and then Jerry can do his. Okay, so Jerry will be going over the solar power facility site plan that is proposed. By state statute, the city may enforce buffer and landscape regulations, but they may not exceed requirements of similar uses in the ag land use and zoning. We obviously, this is our first solar power facility, and we do not really have other similar uses in ag currently. So then what you do is look at other city ordinances for kind of the industry standard. And what we found, the industry standard for setbacks are 50-foot to 100-foot setbacks in most city ordinances. What has been proposed on the site plan by Duke is a 150-foot setback around the entire perimeter, 50-foot vegetative buffer around the entire perimeter except where it abuts the neighborhood to the east. And on that, there is a proposed 100-foot vegetative buffer. And this is in line with other cities. In fact, it exceeds other cities. So based on what we are allowed to do by state statute, staff believes that this would be in compliance and would recommend approval of the site plan. So I'll let Jerry go ahead and talk.
And Mr. Mayor, this continues to be a quasi-judicial matter. The witnesses have been already sworn. If somebody desires in the audience to testify about this, you'll have to stand up and be sworn, if anybody additional that was not sworn previously.
I got one question for Jerry, for you, Scott. Earlier, you said 711, but in your orders it's saying 735. Do that makes a difference? Should it be?
Can you address that, Jerry?
Absolutely. Mr. Mayor, I alerted staff last week, and when we read the ordinances in our office, I said, oh, they're a little bit higher. The properties that are within the annexation, if you look at the Alachua County Map Genius GIS map, they come up with one number. If you go to the actual property register cards, the tax cards, they come up with another number, which is the number that you all have here, is approximately 735 acres. Now, when they do that, a little bit of technical language here, the earth has a curve to it, and so when they make that spherical projection, it comes up a little bit larger. In the application materials for the land use, the zoning, and the site plan, there is a physical survey that was produced by a licensed surveyor in the state of Florida, and it comes up to 711. And so the area that you have advertised is a little bit larger based on property tax records. The actual survey is a little smaller. So that is what the difference is. I would, if I were a transactional attorney or a property rights person, I would look at what a survey says over what a GIS map says, but I feel that because the city has advertised 735, which is larger, and it does reflect what the property cards say, it's kind of a Scrivener's error. The reality of it is, by the licensed, signed, and sealed survey, it is 711.77, and your number came from the GIS system. So
The other thing is we advertise 735 plus or minus, knowing it's an estimate. So I think that kind of covers us.
yes.
I always go with the survey as well, Mr. Mayor. That's the more particularized information. The meridian runs out of Tallahassee, and as Jerry said, you have a curvature of the earth. So 640 acres is a section of land, but with the curvature, there's actually what we call super sections. Sometimes it's a little more than 640. Sometimes it's a lot more than 640 acres of land. And I've litigated the matter of who owns that extra acreage. It can sometimes be a very hotly litigated thing. When you deal with people's land, it becomes a hot button issue. But I agree, the survey is what you take.
Thank you.
And I provided copies to Mr. Walker last week as he was coming up to the meeting here. Okay, so the third and final action we are requesting tonight is approval of the site plan. And this is where we really get into the details of what a portion of the property will be used as. Under the previous two items, you were placing land use and zoning upon the entirety of the annexation area. There is a portion of the annex area which will not be part of the overall site plan, and I will explain that to you shortly. Here, as you can see in this map, the project site does not include Mr. Post's land, which is a long rectangular area that goes north to south that he is retaining for the purposes of growing pine trees and active silviculture. The site plan is only on the area that has the black and white checkered rope around it. And so it is the northern portion of the property, and it does not extend down to the southernmost edge of the property. Here, we're going to talk a little bit more about the specificity. So we see some definitive opportunities because now we are talking about an actual development plan. This is an opportunity for the city of High Springs to create clean, renewable solar energy within its corporate limits, to permit a passive, quiet placeholder on the site. And when I speak in terms of a placeholder as a land planner and professional, this is the type of use where after the term of the lease is done, there is what's called a decommissioning plan. If the leaser does not continue with solar after 35, 40 years, the panels can be removed, the supports can be pulled out, wires that are of a certain size and distance can all be removed, and it can turn back into a farm. It can turn back into active agriculture, or it may be something else decades into the future. But this really creates a placeholder on the site, and nothing else will happen here for over a quarter of a century. This use also reduces nitrogen levels entering into our precious Floridan aquifer. By the removal of an active dairy this close to the county limit and spring sheds and sinks and rivers, you're removing all the pollutants that are associated with active, heavy agricultural uses here. It promotes soil restoration over the time of the contract, and it does that naturally. And as most of you all are probably aware, when farmers rotate fields and they grow corn, and then watermelons, and then carrots, and then lettuces, it allows different attributes of the soil to change over time. Well, by not growing on this site any agricultural produce or doing any extraction off of this site, the microbes, the rain, the natural transmission through the soil can restore itself to being a more healthy organic balance. This will preserve significant tree canopy on the site. And here specifically, what we are talking about in the northwest corner of the area to the upper left of the word project site, you see a stand of trees there. That is approximately 55 acres of trees that are going to be preserved on that corner where the little bend in 174th Avenue is. As well as that 55-acre stand around the entire perimeter of the site, along all the fence lines, the tree canopy will be preserved to create vegetative buffer between the surrounding properties and the use as a solar facility. The tree lines in the center will be modified along that central core directly under the area where it says project site, because that area will be cleared to have panels in it. But around the entire perimeter, we have calculated that the 55 acres has about 40 additional acres for just under 100 acres of tree preservation around the entire perimeter of this area. This will provide employment opportunities both during construction and operation and the long-term maintenance of the facility. Again, these are very quiet after about 6 to 9 months, and then once they are completed, the gates are locked, people will come there for maintenance. It is a very modern and efficient type facility with the solar panels being part of a gridded system. There will be a maintenance building there, and each of the panels effectively talk back through what's called a SCADA system, which is similar to what public works departments use to monitor wastewater treatment plants, electric generation, and water treatment plants. But if something goes wrong with an individual panel, they will know very promptly, and so they can issue a maintenance truck out there and a panel can be replaced, or somebody will come to the site to mow and maintain and monitor the perimeter. The entire site will be under 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week surveillance through closed-circuit cameras, and it will have a fiber optic link that connects it back to a central control station, because this is, of course, a part of the national electric grid once this is constructed. We also feel that a major advantage is when you are looking at the creation of a solar collection facility, you are tremendously increasing the city's ad valorem tax base with no increased demand on roads, because there will not be people living there or going back and forth seasonally with cattle trucks or with agricultural vehicles. You'll basically have a truck or two in a month period that comes there to mow and maintain, and that's it. A single-family residential house under the Institute of Traffic Engineers Trip Generation Manual produces 9.57 trips per day. This facility will produce less than that in a month. So it is a tremendous decrease on the traffic levels associated with traditional development forms. It doesn't place any children in schools, so it doesn't overtax the school system, nor does it create calls for police, fire, and utilities or emergency services out there, because there's no one living there. And should anything happen, there will be training programs that explain to police and fire and emergency responders how to treat things on the site. This site does not propose battery storage upon that site, because that was not a part of the program. And it was also questioned last week at the Planning and Zoning Board, would there be lithium-ion batteries out there? Because we all know that batteries can ignite. It's hot here. Today in my Airport Authority board meeting, I heard when they laser temperatured the runway areas, they were 157 degrees of asphalt. When they lasered the seats of the push carts out there at the airport, they were 222, and I commented, that's blistering heat. And that type of heat can often have an adverse effect on batteries. This facility will not have battery backup on it. It will not have battery smoothing, and so there's no worry of fires occurring out on the property. And that was well received last week at the Planning and Zoning Board meeting. And as the fact that there is no effective development on the site that requires, human contact or imparting impacts on the system, there's no strain on the municipal services of the city. So the request before you is to approve the Duke Energy Renewable Energy Center on the northern portion of this site. Specifically now, we'll look at some of the maps and the site plan to kind of talk around the actual plan. And I learned that my laser does not reflect at all on the television set, so I did bring a larger printed version in case we wanted to talk to any particular portion of the site, whether on just a pure clean map or one that's actually overlaid on top of an aerial if there was any specific questions. We also brought this because there was a very good point brought forward by the chair of the plan board, and we wanted to talk about that too. So there is the portion of the site that is approximately 660 of the acres here to the northern portion, and it does not include Mr. Post's continued civiculture that goes down to the south to 142nd Avenue. The timeline over this project has been similar to the land use and zoning applications. Over the course of last year, we held a couple open houses here at the High Springs Community Center. We mailed out a little over 425 direct mailings to individuals that live in the area, and Duke representatives, as well as myself and city staff, were there talking to members of the public as they came to the meeting in the open house and asked us questions. And we made several modifications to the plan based on comments people brought to the table. We submitted a preliminary application and paid our fees on May 5th of this year. On May 26th, the city manager forwarded us the comments from your professional engineering consultant staff, Midtower and Associates, to which we took and distributed those to all the consultants in this application, and then we resubmitted our responses to comments. As stated, all of the comments that were brought forward were very mild in nature, and they were all professionally addressed, and a resubmittal occurred at the beginning of June. Last week, at your Planning and Zoning Board hearing, they unanimously recommended that you all approve the site plan that is presented before you tonight, and we have a little bit more information tonight based on the comments that were brought forward by citizens as well as Plan Board members. So tonight we are requesting approval of the site plan as presented. Now, specifically, the agricultural land use map and the agricultural zoning will allow the provisions of a solar collection facility. The reason that is so, and has been talked about at this commission, is last year, in July, the Florida legislature and the governor stated that solar is an allowed use in all agricultural land use categories in a local government comprehensive plan and all agricultural zoning districts within an unincorporated area. And it must comply with the setback and landscape buffer area criteria for other similar uses. In other words, you can't get extremely excessive, and you have to match what's out there in the zoning district. There have been several additional documents that have been submitted, specifically the Norman Dew Associates environmental report, as well as the Culpeper and Turpinning drainage calculations. And in a site plan, as you are all aware, there are several other regional, state, and local permits that must be applied for. The Water Management District for Stormwater Management Facility, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection for an Environmental Resource Permit, which allows disturbance of the land, the Fish and Wildlife Commission for a Gopher Tortoise Relocation Permit, which has been approved and is underway, the Department of Health for a well and septic tank. Currently, there are wells upon the property. There will be one well associated with the solar facility, and that will be at the maintenance and operations buildings because it will have a restroom in there and it will have a septic facility right there on site, but everything else will be returned to natural condition. There will be a city driveway permit, which will attach to the northwestern corner of the property, which I'll show you on the site plan. and there will be a county right-of-way permit for underground crossings where the electric line moves from this property westerly to Gilchrist County to the substation where the electrons then go into the national electric grid. And there is also a Gilchrist County substation permit, which was approved unanimously earlier this month by the Gilchrist Board of County Commissioners. This is a copy of the Midtower and Associates engineering review of the site plan documents that was sent to us on May 26th. Your city manager kindly sent it to us the day she received it. We promptly distributed it around and responded to every comment. And I'd like to show you the closing comment on the Midtower document. Pending our minor comments being adequately addressed, we approve this initial submittal and find it generally satisfying the city's land development code, development design standards for a preliminary site plan review. Please address the comments provided herein and include any additional requirements stated for the final site plan submittal per LDC 11.04.05. And one of the comments in there is that as all the permits come in that I talked about a moment ago from the Water Management District, Florida Department of Environmental Protection, Fish and Wildlife Commission, the Department of Health, and then of course the county, that we supply all those permits to the city of High Springs so that you have a unified set of permit documents upon which to regulate and control the facility. And we have met that condition, and their engineer signed and sealed this document. So here is the site plan. As you can see around the perimeter of the site, and I know this is a little bit difficult, so what I'm going to try to do is show you both by hand as well as on your video screen, around the entire perimeter of the property, north, east, south, and west, there is a setback associated where no solar panels will exist, and that will be a buffer area. That distance around the entirety of the site will be 150 feet. In areas where there are residential uses abutting the site, the vegetative buffer will be 2.5 times that as required in the Alachua County Comprehensive Plan and Unified Land Development Code. In areas where we are abutting, for example here, Mr. Post's continuous silviculture, or areas here where it's agriculture, the vegetative buffer area there will be 50 feet. The reason that that was chosen is because those numbers are what were recently adopted by the Alachua County Board of County Commissioners for the provision of buffering and vegetative screening around a solar facility. There were questions that were brought forward last week by the Planning and Zoning Board's attendees and citizens here. There was a really interesting gentleman here, Dr. Helms, with a very, very interesting history. He was a physicist, and then he became a medical doctor, and he was telling us about Alabama, but he was wearing orange and blue. And he stated that he is an avid, for the last several decades, let's say 6 decades, been an amateur radio operator. And he was curious and concerned that the inverters that convert the DC electric gathered from the panels throughout the project would cause radio interference because he's part of the state's backup system for emergency radio. So if police, fire, emergency services cannot work off of land telephones, not that a lot of us have those anymore, or cell phones, that there's a radio system that's out there. The morning after the Planning and Zoning Board meeting, he texted me with his contact information. We immediately began an email correspondence with Dr. Helms. I haven't seen pictures of his radio facility yet, but he has promised that. And we explained to him that the inverters will be compliant with the requirements of the Federal Communications Commission, Part 15, Subpart B, Class A devices for harmonic content and electromagnetic compatibility, EMC. If the inverter is not certified to meet the requirements of FCC Part 15, then all appropriate means shall be implemented to ensure that any inverter electromagnetic emissions meet the requirements of Part 15 and do not cause interference with local radio, TV, or other sensitive receivers. So in that technical explanation, you have a member of your Planning and Zoning Board who happens to be a professional engineer, who had worked on water, wastewater, and electrical type issues, and he talked about things such as Faraday cages, where you put a metal cage over anything that might generate static or radio noise, or putting iron ferrules on a line to eliminate electromagnetic skin effect off the wires. So in our communications with Dr. Helms, we actually sent this information over and explained, as you can see these little blue dots that are coming in here, there are 20 inverters located within the overall solar facility. None of the inverters will be any closer than 450 feet away from the edge of the property. And as you can see, the majority of the inverters run up and down the central spine of the property, and then there's 3 arms off to the east and 1 arm off to the west. I believe the closest one on that is about 465 feet. But most importantly, when we spoke with Dr. Helms, Duke Energy has recently done a solar facility on an Army base. So what I'm showing you here is the responding communication from June 16th from Dr. Helms stating that I appreciate the opportunity to meet with you and express my concerns. The information your engineer supplied is very reassuring. I am familiar with FCC Part 15 because it also sets the limit on spurious emissions from amateur radio service equipment. It sets some pretty high or tough standards. So if your inverters are Part 15 compliant, we're probably in good shape, exclamation point. Also, my RF interference concerns are very similar to the Army's. So if you're replicating the solution that worked for the Army, that gives me a second level of reassurance. And I still want to see his radio equipment because I'm fascinated by that kind of electronics. But again, as Mr. Walker stated, we don't do projects, like right now, we do them right. And so it was very important for us to establish that level of communication the morning after the Planning Zoning Board meeting and make sure that his concerns were addressed. How will the power get to the substation, on poles or buried line? That was a question that was brought forward to the Planning and Zoning Board. So as you can see in this little animation here, from the northwest portion of the property where there's that big purple area of the tree preservation, there will be a connection that will run underground, which also made Dr. Helms happy because there's less chance of any electromagnetic interference coming off of the lines because they won't be up on poles, it'll be under the ground. And so the transmission line will be buried approximately 3 feet deep, and it'll go all the way to the Gilchrist County line to the substation. So there will be no additional poles or chances for electromagnetic interference. And that's good because his house sits right south of that line. And he, sitting here last week, said that made him happy too. A suggestion that came forward from the chair of your Planning and Zoning Board was, you have some areas where you've got 100 feet of vegetation and some areas where it's 50 feet. What if somebody comes and moves to the perimeter edge and they become a residential use? Would they have the opportunity to also get that 100 feet of vegetation? And the answer to that question is yes. There is a 150-foot buffer around the entirety of the site, so that area of land is being preserved. Where it is abutting existing residential uses, we will have 100 feet of dense vegetation in that area. If somebody were to come to us and said, well, I'm going to move to this corner here, and here's Dr. Helms' house, and you can see the buffer is bigger by Dr. Helms' house, but if somebody said, I'm going to turn this into a private, residential area, they could come to us or to Duke, and there would be an opportunity to increase the vegetation there on an as-needed basis or an on-request basis. And if you'd like Ms. Goff to testify to that, she's happy to do that. So we thought that was important to bring forward the comments because it was a really great meeting. I mean, we were just filled with great questions and great dialogue last week. So again, all pending permits that were requested by Midtower and Associates will be supplied to the City of High Springs to finalize these application components in the process here. This is dealing specifically with the buffering requirements. Because you are imparting effectively the rules of Alachua County, because you just put your zoning on it, but that can't be effective until your land use becomes effective, the site has been sort of dual designed. It is meeting the criteria of the city's land development code, both today and in the future, as well as Alachua County's code. So Alachua County's buffer matrix requires that there would be 40 feet of dense vegetation along the perimeter, and in areas where there is residential development, and I'm going to move over to the slide in the upper corner, it would ask for a 150 ask for 75. Our application has a unified 150 around the entire thing. We didn't cut it down in any areas. We just left the 150 foot around the entirety of the perimeter of the property. Moreover, the Alachua County buffer matrix requires that there be 40 feet in that bottom column of a high-density buffer. As we've stated, we are proposing within the 150 feet, 100 feet of vegetation, which is 2.5 times the requirement of the Alachua County Unified Land Development Code. So it will be a very dense 100-foot vegetative buffer in areas where it is abutting residential, and if somebody comes in the future and says, I'm going to build residential here, they can request that, and that area has the ability, because the land isn't being used by any other use, to get a denser vegetation around it. So with that, I want to conclude and state, based on the competent substantial evidence presented in the application materials, the city's professional engineering consultant report and review, the Regional Planning Council's concurrency report, the city's resolution, tonight's presentation, and the Plan Board's unanimous approval, that the applicant is respectfully requesting that the City of High Springs approve the requested solar facility site plan with the associated conditions SIP 22000009. And we're happy to answer any questions you may have. Really thank you for being patient. That was a lot to get out. I'm going to have a sip of water here shortly.
I appreciate how over the last number of months, Duke Energy has really listened to the community. You know, you said you were listening, and you said when you brought a plan forward, it would incorporate a lot of the citizen concerns. And I think what you've presented does that, especially with the buffering. You know, I know there are residents near this property that have been very concerned about the impact, and I understand that. And I also take some solace in that the fact that the people who have lived on the property and been stewards for years are going to be remaining on the property. So they're willing to live with what you're creating, literally, as you know, as it impacts other residents, it's going to impact them too. So there are a lot of things that could happen with that property, and the opportunities that you outlined really, you know, included a lot of the real benefits, you know, the water recharge area and everything, because, you know, property owners have rights. And you know, we call this, you know, a solar facility, but it's a solar farm. You know, seasonally, you harvest things off of the land. Well, during daylight hours, we're going to harvest sunlight. And, you know, really, if this weren't there and someone wanted to come in and put in 6-inch pivot wells and grow hay for export out of the country or wherever else, they by right could do that. And the impact to people's water in the area would be pretty significant with a number of 6-inch wells, for instance, or, you know, heaven forbid, a chicken farm or what have you. I like chicken. I just don't want a chicken farm. But so, I mean, there are going to be impacts. I think this is a win for the community in a spring-sensitive area. And the tax base change, I think, is important. As citizens wonder, why aren't we doing this or that? Something like this that really adds a lot more to our coffers than it is going to cost the city is an opportunity. And I appreciate all you've done to bring this forward. I'm sorry I cannot enthusiastically vote for it, but I'm speaking for it because I believe what you're doing is a good move for the community, and I appreciate the engagement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and that always reminds me of other things that, you know, we didn't think about. I colored this little green square at the top because it brought to light the fact that there will be a pollinator station that will be located here on the property. Since this is not going to be an active agricultural production like hay or corn or melons or something like that, you are tremendously reducing the amount of fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, and the physical interaction of tractors and diesel vehicles moving across this in an agricultural type use. What you're going to see a lot of are bees and birds and other critters that are going to be able to move around underneath this and help restore that, and you're removing all those nitrites that are going into the Floridan and toward the river. So it is really a very, very low impact use, and it's a very passive thing. As I've demonstrated before, the facility will have, thank you, Jenny, it will have tracking panels, several 100,000 of them, and they will wake up in the morning and catch the sun coming out of the east, and they will slowly track to the sun at the west, and at the end of the day, they'll go to sleep. There was a question last week, well, are you going to go out and wash the panels? Well, the rainwater that hits those panels will generally wash the dust off, and if there's an inclement weather event that happens, because Duke monitors the National Weather Service, because they are an electric provider for our nation, the panels will go to sleep like that. And then they'll return when the sun comes back. So all the items that Commissioner Ambrose brought forward were very important, and we agree with them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, may I? Mr. Diedenbach, could I ask you please to put up your PV array slide because it differs from what was submitted. Those white holes that are in the middle of this site, can you tell me what those are? Because they're not on this plan.
Yeah, and I'm going to go back to this drawing. I am presuming that what you have was the initial submittal that was done perhaps in May, or are you looking at the resubmittal based on the engineering comments, Mr. Mayor?
I haven't received anything that was resubmitted that I know of. I don't know. I got what you guys originally submitted.
Okay, so you have the original drawings prior to the city engineer's review. Vanessa, do you want to respond?
Vanessa Goff, Duke Energy. So white areas are just areas that we're not putting any panels because they're small depressions that are there. And so based on the ERP that we submitted in the stormwater, you basically want to try to make sure you don't have any stormwater runoff. So what we do is we try to use the natural depressions and grade the site a little bit to make sure that if there's any excess water that's not going through or percolating through the sandy soils, that it has some place to flow so it doesn't go off site. So those are just little, and in the C&T's report that we submitted, it shows kind of like the drainage just all stays on site and it gives them a little bit of natural place to go.
And that's also the case to the south of the dairy where they're staying, that little rectangular cutout, that's also a natural depression?
Yes, yep.
The pollinator area that you have up at the northern corner of the property, would it be possible to move that to adjacent to the residential area that's down on the south, I guess, eastern corner there?
Of the area by where the Arndts are retaining?
No, by where the people live in High Springs Estates. Would it not be appropriate to have that next to a residential area that's directly abutting a power plant? Would that not be perhaps a little bit more amenable to people that live there?
So the reason we chose that acreage in the top front is that is where the laydown is gonna be. So like as like all the trucks are coming in there and it's like the open space on the site to like take deliveries. So during construction, that is probably like where the most traffic comes in and out.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we'll take like it's basically a big yard and then because there's nothing's gonna be there after construction, then we try to make it prettier instead of just leaving a big open, I guess, kind of dozered area.
I think there may be another part of the question too in there, and Mr. Mayor, for clarification, if Commissioner Whites would help me with my understanding. You merely can't take and exchange the pollinator for the panels in that area because, and Vanessa can get much more technical about them, the panel areas are specific electrical circuits, effectively, that have inverters. So you can't just take a few rows of panels off of here and go put them there because there is a balance of the collection field areas. So think of like petals on a flower. They don't all go on one stem. They are distributed around the site into an array. So we couldn't just cut off, let's say, the size of the pollinator area, slide that there, and take those panels to where the pollinator is. I was maybe reading into a question.
I understand what you're saying. I'm doing my best to go to the mattresses for the people who live there and who are going to look out their backyard and see solar panels pointing at their house every morning because they're at the east. It's going to be coming right at them. You know, as the day goes, they won't have to look at them so much, but this site plan has 494.12 acres for the total development area. If you're leasing 711 acres, is the post property that's not being developed 216.88 acres?
There's 55 acres of the canopy preserve. There's a total of 91 acres that's unused that makes up that 150-foot setback. There's a 10-acre cutout where the Arndts are keeping their homestead, and then there's a cutout where the existing dairy is, because Mr. Arndt requested to keep a couple of cattle, I think for his entertainment, because he's so used to getting up at 4 in the morning.
So there's no opportunity at this point to set back these panels that are right here up against High Springs Estates. There's, there's a green area up here for the Arndts, which is a vegetative buffer, it looks like, which is really nice. Would it not also be appropriate or possible to take this array just to the east of this inverter right here that directly abuts High Springs Estates? Is there not the possibility to do a re-engineering or redesign? I realize that's asking for something, but since this is the first plan set we're seeing, where I can actually apply this to the actual visual of what's there, for the sake of the folks that live right there, what are the options to give them a little bit more relief?
So in order to get kind of like go through all the permitting process, including the ERP, we've had engineers working on this for months and months and months and submitting applications to states. And they did, like Jerry said, they did design it with the purpose of like making sure that it can electrically connect properly, and that when you have a tracking system, it has so many rows that have to go per tracker and so many panels per string, and there's definitely an electrical, which I'm not an electrical engineer by any means, electrical perspective to it. So if you go through and you need to say at this point go and redesign everything, then we would have to go back to the utility commission asking people that pay their Duke bills for additional money to basically, that would probably be $1 million change to be able to move those panels. So to kind of keep our customers' costs as low as possible, we try to make sure that when we get to a point where we're designing, we want to design, appropriately, abide by all the regulations, try to make sure we have as much of a setback as we can. We do have over 250 feet. We've reached out to landowners. We've definitely tried to make a very big effort about what type of vegetation that they would like to see there. So we're trying to do as much as we can, and there definitely is like a bunch of engineering that goes into that decision too.
Undoubtedly, I understand that entirely. But, being as these are the first set of plans I'm seeing, this is the only information I have to go on. I understand that the design has been going on, but this is just what I'm seeing here. So, and I understand from meeting with Coy that this facility is designed to generate 100 megawatts. So would it not be, in case something goes down, or to have redundancy? I understand that. Is that not accurate?
It's not for redundancy. So when you go through, so it's 100 megawatts of DC and 74.9 megawatts of AC. So when it goes from DC to, it's converted from DC energy to AC energy, you need more DC capacity to create AC energy. So, and it does, it basically makes it so there's enough overbuild on there, so when the sun is shining, that you can put out all 74 megawatts. So in order to put out all 74 megawatts at a specific net capacity factor, which is like the efficiency, so if you're converting like megawatts to kilowatt hours, you want to get as much as you can out of that. So all of our systems are designed to be a 28% net capacity factor, which has that overbuild, which takes the conversion rate from DC to AC to be 100 to about 100 megawatts to 75 megawatts AC.
I also had a question about battery storage. You had indicated at the plan board meeting, which I did attend, and it was quite, it was interesting. And Dr. Helms was very, very informative. He was a really neat guy. You indicated at that meeting, and again tonight, that battery storage is not proposed, but that's not consistent with what your construction project manager is telling the residents in High Springs Estates. He is telling them that that battery storage is in the future, perhaps 5 years down the road. Is that not accurate?
Not at this facility. This facility is not set up for battery storage. So if you set up a facility for battery storage, you have to order a certain type of inverter. The inverters that we have on order are T-Mic, which comply with the FCC Part 15. You need SMA's the only inverter manufacturer that can allow you DC coupled battery storage. So the
then
proper inverters are not here.
There will never be a time when there's battery storage capability at this site.
They will not be at the site, no.
Okay.
And also, if we ended up having to do an AC battery storage, the substation is located in Gilchrist County, so it would go by the substation, not by the solar facility. So it would not be in the High Springs proper.
I mean, I've met with folks in High Springs Estates. I don't know if anybody else has. They're really concerned, and rightfully so. They have a wastewater treatment plant on their southern border, and now they're going to have a power plant on their western border, and they're being told there's no negative impact to their property value, but when some of them reached out to property appraisers, they were told absolutely, your property value is going to drop quite a bit. So I understand that you guys have your studies that have been done. That's not what these people are being told. So they're scared, and they're going to have panels 150 feet from their backyard. We can't give them a little bit more than that?
It's closer to 250 for them.
Okay,
But
okay, so this is a 50-foot long, and they're used to seeing hundreds of acres of grass. There's a big change for them. I mean, what was it that you said, K, was no impact on property values, and it would not reduce light or air to surrounding neighborhoods. You don't think it will at all?
No, Mr. Chair and Mr. Mayor, we do not believe that it will reduce light or air to adjacent neighborhoods. You are effectively taking panels that are about the size of a door and placing them at a distance of 3 to about 9 feet in the air. The air that flows through the area will not be radically changed because you have tree lines and tree breaks along a lot of the existing fences and property boundaries out there. So the wind that is generated in our atmosphere doesn't generate from the ground, it generates from the clouds and the ionosphere and the effect of the Coriolis effect of the earth. So there will not be a change in the light or air out there. This facility will go dark in the evening time. There will not be light emitted in surrounding areas. It doesn't have security lights around through the fields that are going to be projecting as if you had residential development out there with people that had lights on farm poles or lights on barns, and so it doesn't create light out there. There was discussion at the plan board about windbreaks and things of that nature. Since Duke monitors the National Weather Service, NOAA, we don't see that there will be any change in the wind pattern out there because the breeze that flows through the trees today will flow through the trees tomorrow, and these panels will not be affecting the overall convection of wind across this property. I wanted to add something on the buffering and the fact that you just can't disassemble the circuit out here because the circuit areas that are tied to the blue dots, which are the inverters, create effectively an electric circuit that's a system. Under the rules of Alachua County, had Duke Energy chose to build this facility in Alachua County, they would be imparting the rules that we are putting on there, except for they would go for a 75-foot buffer, and they would go for 40-foot of vegetation in there. Duke Energy has worked diligently with the citizens in the area and met with several individuals around the property and have offered 2.5 times of what the vegetative buffer is. And so from a professional planning perspective and from a person that owns an engineering, survey, landscape architecture, planning, and construction company, I can tell you that the difference between a 40-foot tree buffer versus a 100-foot vegetative buffer, which is a high-density buffer, will be very difficult to see through 100 feet of thick vegetation around the perimeter. And even beyond that, there will be 50 feet of open space, and beyond that, there will be fencing around the entire grid. So I highly doubt that someone will be able to see through 100 feet of solid vegetation to see panels that are not effectively much taller than myself, that are going to sit like that during the day and then rest at night. So by 2.5 times the required buffer, we feel that that vegetation will be very thick around that property and shield the view into the site and not cause any reflectivity out of the site.
And we did also move the fence. So like the fence we had at the 150-foot mark all the way around. And so wherever there's any residential, we're moving it within enough space so you can get like a pickup truck around. We have to be able to get a pickup truck around the perimeter just for safety. So we've moved the fence as close to the as close to the panels as we possibly could.
Giving the rural feel of the countryside around the property as opposed to having the fence all the way out at the edge and then the trees inside the fence.
Has that been reflected in revised documents that have been submitted? Okay, I guess I just haven't had a chance to see revised documents. And I also didn't see anywhere in any of the stuff that I read what the proposed vegetation was. Do you have a plan, what you're going to plant?
So we always do native species, and we work with our typical mode is to work with a landscape architect that is local to the area, so they can tell us, hey, we're getting ready to plant, our vegetative buffer, and they'll tell us what to plant that will grow. So, for instance, like red cedars is something that we have had several discussions lately about planting and having to understand the timing to do that. So you have to do that in the fall. You can't do it in the spring because it needs to have a cold snap to be able to get established. So we want to make sure, we've been on several, we've had several times where we've submitted the landscape plan up front and said, hey, this is what we're going to plant, and then we go and we work with a local landscaper, and they're like, none of this is going to grow unless you put buckets and buckets of water on it, or have to put in an irrigation system, or do things that the cows will eat, or whatever's around there. So what happens is when we're getting ready to plant it in the season that we're going to plant it, we'll make sure that we work with somebody local that understands what will grow in the area and what will survive.
I have 7 local landscape architects that would like to help. Our landscape architects and our survey crews are the crews that have been out on site, and it was a question, again, from Dr. Helms and another member, Mr. Mayor, during the course, like, who's out there and who's putting silver tags on trees and putting in, marking tape? We have done a 100% canopy survey of the entirety of the property, and then we've done that for multiple reasons. The first reason is to quantitatively understand the tree canopy out there. The second is to qualitatively look at those trees out there to determine which are the best to survive because they're Florida native type species. And the third is to ensure that the proper tree mitigation is being paid. There are some areas in the center of the site that I showed you along the area where the array line and the main transmission line is that will be removed, but there will be tree mitigation paid into the city of High Springs for mitigation where additional trees can be built elsewhere or planted elsewhere in the city. So our landscape architects have been working on this process as well as our surveyors for, several months now.
I have more, I'm sorry. Would it be possible to generate your PV solar array using GIS so that those of us up here can see where the arrays are going to be with respect to the outskirts of the property?
We can do that, and we have done that, and I think Coy offered when you went to visit to do that, and I believe he did take Mr. Yoho out
He
there
did, but I had to go back to work, so I have not had an opportunity to do that. But what I'm asking is, could we get something in printout form, because it's 150 40 million degrees right now, and I don't know if any of us want to be out there walking in the tall grass. But as a printout form, would that be something that we could get? Because I think that it's important, if no one else up here has spoken to anybody in this neighborhood, they need to understand what they're voting on and just how close these are going to be to these people's houses that live in our city. I think that will impact people that we're here to protect.
Mr. Chair, the answer to that question is the both preliminary initial submittal as well as the second submittal depicts exactly where the arrays are. It's the gray shaded area, and you can see because they're labeled where the inverters are, and then you can see exactly where the grid is. And you can see also that on each different array and inverter, there are distances on there. And by example here, closest to High Springs is today, you can see that the closest point at the southwest corner there is 235.4 feet, and at the northern point, it's 196.9, or 196 feet, 9 inches. That's not a decimal, it's actually an inches mark. But it gives a complete depiction around the outside, which is, again, in excess of the code requirements, and it is uniformly placed with a 150-foot buffer around the entirety. So that answer is contained in the site plan drawings.
But that's not a GIS.
That's a survey
Print
and an
out.
engineering drawing that's built into a signed and sealed survey.
I understand that, but most people don't think in terms of surveyed boundaries, and most people don't carry a scale around in their bag to make sure they can measure. We're just regular folks up here, and I think the picture is what's going to depict the reality of what's going to be constructed out there.
Mr. Chair and Mr. Mayor, I think, and again for clarification, are you asking for a photo simulation? Because when I think of GIS, I think of digital data and spatial squares, but I think what I'm hearing you say is, what would a photo rendering look like of what does 200 feet look like behind a
Sure.
100-foot buffer? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to bring it down to regular people level so that, you know, we can all be on the same page. We're not engineers, we're not planners. But I've been out there, you know, I've walked out there and I've talked to people that live out there. And I think it would be really important, because we can't make a decision based on the site plan that's in our packet. I went and asked them to give me all of the submittals. I haven't gotten any resubmittals, though I didn't know there were revised drawings. So, I mean, I've asked enough questions, and it's getting late enough in the evening that I don't want to take any more of your time, but, Mr. Mayor, I would respectfully request that we just table this for now until we could get information that we could make a more informed decision on.
Yeah, hold on, let me get to them. Any other questions? All right. Before we haven't voted on, we haven't made a motion yet. You got a question? Come on. You just asking questions, not giving information. Am I right? Scott, you don't mean this one.
Good evening. My name's Janet Evans, and I went back to the April 14th meeting that everybody had, where a lot of the concerns and stuff came out. And I know that our Madam City Manager and our city attorney at the time both spoke to really keeping these people's concerns in mind when decisions were made. That was very informative, what you said. I think that one thing that might alleviate some of the concerns is for the people that are going to be most affected by this, if they have a little bit more input or reassurance of this buffer area that's going to be done. I hear kind of, a lot of what you said makes sense. This is very informal. I just jotted down some notes so that everybody can have a paper of this. And what it was my ideas of what landscaping might look like. And again, the best planting is in the fall. And then some some suggested trees and bushes and plants. Of course, they are native in nature, they're low maintenance. They would provide a visual screen all year long. They improve the native habitat. They promote the healthy ecosystem when we talk about the leaves dropping and all those kinds of things. And a lot of them will increase the birds, the insects, the good insects, all these kinds of things that we want to create this real nice habitat. And of course, they're all beautiful. There's a large, medium, and small trees based on their heights. So what I would suggest is that you have kind of a pattern, but with a little variety. And I had some ideas here of trees. I did find out about a woman who's in the Audubon Society. She has worked with folks, I believe she said Duke Energy, and other people creating this kind of buffer. And I understand that some of the stuff that she's been involved with is really very beautiful. Again, you know, when you design, you're going to have a little mixture of the tall trees with the mediums, and then you kind of come down. So you got a nice barrier background there. And then you come closer up with like some different grasses, like muley grasses, maybe some drifts of wildflowers. And a lot of these things as well, it can be donated through the Audubon Society and some of the places like that that are happy to kind of get involved. I think that the people who are really concerned with what this is going to look like, it talks like a lot of the stuff is really set in stone, but I think that the people
Okay,
would,
Ms. Evans, your
would
time
be
is, Ms. Evans, your time is up. Thank you.
happier if they felt like they had some input. And these are it's real informal, just some simple ideas.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir. I think I had you.
I need to state my name again, or?
Yes, just for the record.
Todd Yoho. I've had the opportunity to meet Miss Goff. She was out at my home. And I had an opportunity to have Corey Graham at my home, who is the project manager. And I did a virtual tour of where their setbacks are going to be. They've changed quite a bit since I was here and since I've talked with Bernie Arndt and his sons. I'm quite satisfied with what I'm seeing so far. They are pushed back about 260 from the original on my property line. They both, Corey and Ms. Goff, have worked with me. I've given them suggestions on trees. I explained to them that I'd like to see the green field left. They're going to work with me according to what they've said. I've been given cards from both. I spoke with Corey today. They put stakes in the ground. I asked him what that was all about. He immediately told me that was a silt fence. That where the silt fence is, I says, is that where the array's gonna go? He says, no, that's not what we told you. So they are pushing it back. As far as keeping green space, I really like what you said about the flowers. That'd be cool. Throw those in there. But they are trying to work things out there, providing it turns out that way. Yeah. If it turns out that way, I mean, there's two of us that are having to look at that. And as far as where that array's at, I'm not certain what I'm looking at on that. I understand Mrs. Weiss' concern. She's been working very hard with us. She's been a really stand-up person as far as the concerns of that neighborhood. But if you guys are really doing what you say you're doing from myself and my neighbor, I can't speak for anyone else on the other end at all, because I don't know who they are other than the Arndts. I've been neighbors with Arndts for 23 years. They've all been stand-up people as well. So I guess that's really all I have to say. I saw the project in operation today, and I was told it is a silt fence, raised, and perimeter fences are being pushed further back. So we're talking probably 260 to what, 300 feet? Is that the deal? Yeah. He said he was gonna put in 150 foot of vegetation. Somebody said that. I says, don't do that. Put the red cedars in. I've been picking red cedars up for wherever I can find them. If I can snatch one out of the ground, I put them in. 8 years, I've got one that's probably 20 feet. And if I talked to Coy about it, I says, if you stagger them, you only need 30 feet, because in 5-6 years, you aren't gonna see through them anyway, which leaves a green space for the critters, as everyone speaks of, wanting to walk and come through. If they cut the fences down and push everything back, they're gonna stay there. I mean, they're just gonna be able to migrate through, so. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you.
Hopefully it turns out that way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
As a gardener, they'll ask you, when is the best time to plant a tree? And the answer is 20 years ago. So I would just encourage these folks to, in this fall, if they can start some planting ASAP, it's just going to make things grow in and look better faster.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for the commission? Yes.
You know, if I would, this is first reading, correct? Yeah.
Well, there's not on a site plan, there's not first and
Okay.
second, there's just approval
So
of
this
site
is just-
plan.
Okay, never mind. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right.
May I respond to Mr. Yoho's comments? And
Yes.
the wonderful lady who loves to be a gardener. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Jerry Dienbach. What you effectively have before you tonight and is being requested is a development order. That is an enforceable document with the full force of law as you would have on a zoning. So code enforcement and your engineering professional staff, building inspectors, as well as state, regional, and other inspectors will be on site. While I understand the request, or there has been a suggestion to table the item, the buffers that are being offered are in excess of what Alachua County would have on the property. The vegetation that is being proposed in that is 2.5 times that is required by Alachua County. So while we are happy to continue to, meet people one-on-one and take great suggestions like the red cedars, I mean, that can continue to occur, but the document that you have before you has been professionally reviewed and meets all of the criteria for an approval. We love the interaction. I just don't think that there's sometimes the ability to change certain things because of the way they have to be engineered. But we are doing our absolute best to listen to everybody and incorporate those comments in. And the document that you see before you that's been professionally reviewed reflects that.
Right.
Mr. Mayor, may I please talk a little bit?
Yes.
So in our LDC, in our design and development regulations, we have what's required to be in our site plans. And so they've met all of that. So we can't really require additional, if they meet city regulations, they meet city regulations. And not that we can't ask and request and try to get more, because we always do, right? And just to explain how the process works, I mean, before they start construction, we'll have a pre-construction meeting with an agenda on there where we we exchange things. We get, the bond information. We exchange the contacts on the project managers for the site. We go back over the site plan and ensure that they are going to comply with the site plan and do what they say they're going to do. And then all along the process, we have inspectors out there inspecting the site. And then prior to, they have to have a final approval from the city on the site before they can even begin operation. It's no different than when you do a building. We treat a site the same way. So we actually have a punch list for the site, and we go through it, and they have to, clean up the punch list before we will offer the letter of approval. So, so there is a process in place that if y'all approve the site plan, that that staff ensures that what y'all approve is what happens, so.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. All right, thank you so much. As she was, Jerry. What's your occupation, Jerry? What you do?
Mr. Mayor, I am a professional land planner. I have AICP certification, meaning the American Institute of Certified Planners, which I've had for about a quarter of a century. And I am also a lead accredited professional for low energy and efficient design. I am a co-owner of a company of approximately 100 individuals that's made up of professional civil engineers, professional land surveyors, professional landscape architects, as well as construction engineering inspections and professional traffic engineers. And so my expertise over the last 32 years has been specifically either writing and helping the Regional Planning Council with comp plans and codes, or in the sphere of helping cities develop codes, or processing development applications for cities, counties, universities, and private individuals.
Okay.
Well, that's what I do.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you. So after hearing all that, I was driving, I can't remember if I was on I-75 or 10, and there was a solar field. No buffers. No buffers. All you can see is solar panels. And I'm pinching in my mind just 100 feet of buffering. It's going to be kind of hard to see through it. And y'all say y'all going up to 200 and something feet. So I want to thank y'all for working with us. And you answered some of my questions. Not going to affect the water. I was concerned about the batteries, but you told us tonight no batteries, because my biggest concern was would have impact on the fire department. Not so. Police department, I don't think y'all going to have to go out there, because I don't think you have to. Hopefully nobody don't steal from a plant. And it will bring some revenue into the city. So I thank you for your hard work and working with the people in this city, with this area. So with that being said, at this time I entertain a motion on this item.
I move that we approve the solar power facility site plan by Duke Energy.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any other discussions or questions?
I'd still like to request we table it for a couple weeks so we could see a site plan that would mean something. I understand there may not be a second for that, but that's still my request.
Did we get a second on this motion? Okay, so we already got a motion and a second on this, Commissioner. Okay. Now roll call.
Can I say something before you vote?
We don't have to vote.
I would think that all the panel members.
If you can come up to the mic, Mr. Yoho, please.
I would think that all the panel members here, including you, Mr. Mayor, would go out and see what they set up out there so far before you vote on it, just so that things don't change. I mean, if Duke Energy is being truthful, then yes, there probably should be a revised site plan with those setbacks. There are pink stakes in the ground right now. That means there is a silk fence there. According to the project manager, he's going to oversee it the entire time. He said he'd work with me, he'd work with my neighbors. Unfortunately, my neighbors aren't even here. I'm here. But she's been invited to come out. Catherine has. But none of you, as she said earlier, nobody's been involved with our neighborhood other than Catherine, really. Go out and see. Bernie Arndt's not going to mind. He's going to encourage it. That's my opinion. If you can see what they're setting up, if everything's kosher to what they're telling me, project manager, person like this, if everything's moving to the west of that, then I would think you'd all know. It was 114 today, heat index. I was mowing grass. I think we can go out and look at that through, a car. It drives real easy out on that field. I've lived there for 23 years. I know what Bernie Arndt does. I know how they can get in and out. It's not that difficult to figure that out before you vote.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
my opinion.
But as the city manager said earlier, You want to repeat yourself, please?
Yeah, to some extent, a site plan, and correct me if I'm wrong, city attorney, it's like a plat. If it meets city regulations, it meets city regulations. And they have complied, according to staff review, with all city regulations. So if the city attorney has anything else to say about that, I don't want to give false information, but that's how it's typically practiced.
So my experience, Mr. Mayor, is with site plan approval process, you have less discretion per your code. In other words, if a developer comes to you and they meet the requisites of your land development code, you have very little discretion to say no because they've met the criteria under your code. And in many instances, site plan approval process is somewhat a pro forma engagement. And my experience in history also is that some developers, for lack of a better term, jam you with your requirements. They say, I've met the code, I've adhered to it, and try to turn me down at this stage. So this situation is different than that in that the applicant is saying, look, we've met the code, but we're also doing more than what the code allows for in order to get approval of our site plan. So the presentation that Jerry has made and Duke Energy tonight is somewhat of it's like a contract in a way. Ashley just said it's like a plat approval, and she's right. We can adhere, we can hold them to the presentation and say, no, 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 this is what you said at the meeting where your site plan was approved. And so we'll have that information. I suspect also we will have a landscaping plan at some stage along the way that will say, we're putting in this many red cedars, we're putting in this kind of flora, et cetera, et cetera. So there will be more information that will come down the road as this process goes on. But that's the legal criteria that we see a lot of the time in the development review process. And I concur with Ashley in her statements 100%.
Yes, so do I. All right, thank you. Yes, Sanjay.
Mr. Mayor, if I could address you again, please, respectfully, Jerry Diedenbach. I have spoken, obviously, with Vanessa, sitting here. A way I think that we can move forward with this and meet Commissioner White's concern, and those brought forward by Mr. Yoho, is the following. You can approve this because it does meet the conditions and criteria of your comprehensive plan, the land development code, and that of Alachua counties. Vanessa has stated, and she will state under oath if you would like her to be the one saying it, that Duke would invite people to the pre-construction site visit out there. And so if folks like Ms. Evans here or others wanted to walk that during the pre-construction and say, you know, I'd really like some red cedars too, that they could have input at that point in time. It would not undo the approval because the buffers would stay the same width and everything would be in compliance with your land development code, but it would allow people, if they wanted to take and say, in this area, I'd really like this type of vegetation, or I'm used to watching the sun go down over these trees, could you do it this way here? And it wouldn't violate the site plan at all, and it would give citizens an additional opportunity, if they chose to engage, to have some say as we get closer and more things are on the ground, they can come out and actually see, okay, well, that is what 296 feet looked like. And Vanessa has said, and she will testify to that too if you want, that she'd be willing to do that for your community and your citizens.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, on the floor. Am I right? Do we need to read the motion again just for clarity? Thank you. And second by Ms. Clark. Okay, so I have a motion on the floor. Done more discussion. All in favor of the motion, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
No.
All right, motion carries. All righty, so we did item number 6. Item number 7, discuss and consider and act on ordinance, resolution 2022-G.
Mr. Mayor, this is Resolution 2022-G, a resolution setting the election to fill the City Commission seat number 3 in the city of High Springs, Florida, designating the election for the 8th day of November 2022, setting the qualifying period, setting the qualifying fees, providing for an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass Resolution 2022-G upon its reading by title only.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, any discussion? Any questions?
Something that we have to do. No question?
No questions, no comments? All right, entertain a motion.
I make a motion, we approve 2022-G. And for those of you that don't have the ordinance in front of you, the qualified period would be July 18th to July 21st.
I second.
Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Anyone from the audience? Questions or comments? Hearing none, Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Ambrose?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Whites?
Yes.
Mayor Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor James?
Yes.
Okay, move on to item number 8, discussing placing RFQ for city attorney. Okay, who put? I don't see nobody say who put this on here. Who want to discuss this?
I'll speak to it if I may, please, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
We've lost Andrea, sadly, and I know that, I'm certain that everybody is very, very unhappy about that at the fabulous firm that's representing us. I'm concerned. I know Mr. Walker is very popular, and he's representing a lot of cities right now, and I'm just a little bit concerned that he's going to be stretched a little bit too thin. And I haven't heard what the plan is going forward without Andrea there. So I thought this might be an opportunity to see what else was available in terms of representation for the city.
Mr. Mayor, that's a fair question, I think.
Jerry, Antoine, get his card for me. I need to ask you a question, but not concern this issue here. But can you give Antoine your card if I can give you a call?
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to address Commissioner White's question. That's a fair question, without question. Yes, that was a stress. That's a stressor that Andrea left us. And as I think at the time I said, it's a bit of a compliment, and it's also disappointing when we lose personnel who we view as very talented and conscientious. She had a great work ethic when she was working with us as well. But it's a compliment that a large 250-person attorney group wants her. And I feel like we have a tendency in our small group, we're large for Gainesville, but in the grand scheme of things, we're not very big as far as 250-person law firms. But we plan to replace her with an attorney, and that attorney is taking her bar exam in just a couple of weeks. What COVID has taught us is that you don't necessarily have to be in Gainesville, Florida, or High Springs, Florida, for that matter, to practice law. And the person that we have coming up the ladder is Danielle Adams. She's been with us for 4 years in undergrad. She was a file clerk for us. So we've had a chance to evaluate her during those 4 years. She's very organized, great work ethic, and I believe very highly intelligent young lady. Then we've had her as our law clerk for 3 years. So we've had 7 years of experience with this particular employee, and she was working for law clerking for a large firm in Virginia, and it wasn't a good match. She didn't like it particularly, and we talked, and I said, well, why don't you come work for us? And so we plan to hire her. Fingers crossed she passes the bar examination in July, and she'll find out in September. So that's an add-on that we will have that will alleviate some of the pressure that Commissioner White's just said. And it's somebody that we've had for 7 years working in our law firm already. So she understands our processes and how we plan to do it. Now, she's going to live in Washington, D.C. She's going to American University right now. That's where she's graduating. Her commitment to me is she'll be here in Florida 1 week out of the month. During that week, you'll see her here. The way we do it is we mentor people, meaning that I don't just stick somebody that's a relatively new attorney. I'm going to be teaching her how to do it, what to do, much the same that I did with Andrea. And Andrea, at the point where she left us, was able to run a show by herself. She was able to, she had the experience and the ability to do that. Kirsten's doesn't have the experience just yet that Andrea did. I wanted her to be here this evening so she could see a very kind of a contested issue that we had tonight. And in my view, you can have a contested issue in local government, and everybody was so respectful tonight. And so I wanted her to see that and see how that's handled, both from a commission standpoint, a management standpoint, land planning standpoint, and an attorney standpoint. I think it's very helpful for a young attorney to see that you can disagree, but you don't have to be disagreeable when presentations are made. And if you sit through other local governments, there's a large city just a little way south of here. I won't call out the name of it. It's very difficult. Their city attorney left their employment and took about a half pay cut because it is so difficult and people are so disagreeable and so animus in the way that they speak with each other. And it's not speaking to the issue, it becomes a personal attack. That's not how things should go. So I think Commissioner White's point is very good one. What's the plan? How are we going to do it? With the addition of Danielle, we'll have 11 attorneys in our group. So I think we have the capacity right now to handle this particular situation, this client, which is the city of High Springs. I enjoy it a lot. I enjoy the personality. It's been here for, I'm not sure how long, maybe about 10 years, maybe a little bit better than 10 years now. I'm not sure. But when we do your work, and I'm not sure if the commissioners are aware of this, but we send a billing to you every month. So you see how much time that we spend. And the hours that we spend, if we were charging our normal hourly rate, you get a discount by 50% of what normally we would charge. Every month that we get a bill, I think our monthly retainer is about $5,300 or $5,400 a month right now. You will see our time that equates to at least $10,000, if not $12,000, sometimes more than that. The reason that we do that is twofold. One, we enjoy it. I think Kirsten enjoys it. She's learning. She's from Wildwood, Florida. So she comes from a pretty small town. I'm from a small town, so I enjoy local government work. It's one of the things that I enjoy, number one. Number two, I enjoy coming to places like High Springs. You go to a town of Micanopy, and you feel good about, at the end of the local government meeting in a town like that, you feel good about what you're doing, and the reason is you're doing a public service as well as what you're doing in the practice of law. I find that very interesting. Other areas of law, I may not have that same interest. I'm going to be 64 in next month. I have young children. You're going to see me around. If you have me, I'm going to be around for a while. I've got 14-year-old, 13-year-old, and 12-year-old twins. That means I'm going to be working. I'm going to be here for a little bit longer. So if you have me, I would prefer not to go out to RFP. That's in answer to a fair question, I think. But if you want to go for RFP, then we'll certainly engage in that too. But that's my game plan. I'm the manager of our group. I'm the managing partner. And you always want to have a game plan. When you're in a business, they don't call law practice a business, but it is in many ways. It's a business as well. And you have to have people coming up the ladder. And I think we do have that in a very talented young lady that I'm I'm very excited to bring Danielle and start teaching her about what is going on and how they're doing it. We do have other attorneys in our practice that handle governmental work as well. Kelly Martin's in our group. Dave Wagner, who used to be the county attorney, Alachua County attorney, is in our group. So we have a bench. It's not as deep as it was. We'll have Danielle on that bench coming down the road here in a little bit. And it's not to say we couldn't possibly expand to bring in some other attorneys. I think one of the things as a manager, you have to be hooked into the talent pool. You got a law school right close by. We're potentially hiring a law clerk out of University of Chicago, so we're looking at that situation right now. And so I think we have a good amount of talent with what we have, and we're certainly not static. We're potentially adding people on. One other thing I'd point out to you is that municipal law is a very unique area. You have a fire department, you have employment issues, you have police department, all the cities we represent. Then you have things like tonight, which are land use elements. I plan to be here a lot in the future with High Springs, and it's a unique area. When I took this client over, the attorney that had this client before me was a friend of mine, but he was not a city attorney. He was a real estate lawyer out of Gainesville. And for lack of a better way of saying it, I think he got hoodooed on something, and there was litigation that was going on, and the city was in a bad place in that litigation. I'm also a litigator. I go to court a whole lot. And we had no defense. And I told the judge that. I said, here's where we're at, Judge. There's no sense in us fighting something where we don't have a legitimate or a good faith defense. Let's end this litigation right now. And the judge agreed and said, all right, this case is over and we're moving on. The other side tried to assess attorney's fees against the city, but they were unsuccessful in doing that because we ended the litigation right there. So not only do we have an understanding of land use and land planning and how that interrelates to the decisions that you make here, but we also have the ability to litigate, which is also a very unique talent. A lot of attorneys don't have that ability. So that's what you have right now, and we would like to continue that relationship. We've been the city attorneys for Newberry for now 50 some odd years. I'd like to have that same, I'd like to be able to look back when I end my career and say, we've been your city attorney for a number of years as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor? I agree with Commissioner White. I believe we do need to go out for an RFP. Sometime back, a couple of years back, I heard had a conversation with someone, and I don't remember who it was now, but, or maybe it was something I read, that it's not uncommon to go out for an RFP for attorneys, other contractors that you deal with. So I agree that we do need to go out for an RFP.
Yeah, I think you came out in 2009 or 2010, somewhere in there, if my recollection is right, so over a decade. You know, staff leaving right now with COVID, I can totally get it. I also know that it's not like across almost every industry people are being strained and stressed. So part of what we need to recognize is, you know, attorney services aren't a commodity. There's a lot of intellectual capital, both historically in the relationship with the city, but also in the areas of law that you've mentioned. You and I talked recently about some concerns, you know, I had about attorney services, and, you know, as we're growing and the types of demands we have, and I was very happy with your answers and responses. You know, so if we were going to go out for an RFP, you know, what are we really looking for? You know, it would be really tough, and I don't know so far that you've not performed very admirably. So, I'm comfortable continuing to move forward until there's a real reason to end the professional relationship and put our investment in that relationship and your knowledge of the city and our rules and our laws and our staff, out to someone who's not familiar.
My position at this point would sort of mimic Ross. I think at this time we are where we need to be, and I think we're in a position where we can rely on the attorney staff that we have. If I see where things are changing, I'll be the first one to speak up and says, I think we need to do something different. But as it stands right now, I'm happy with it the way that it is, and I see no need to do anything different at this time.
Ma'am. Yes.
It's difficult to discuss issues publicly when you have issues with charter officers or even other commissioners. It's really difficult. I've had my issues. I think Attorney Walker knows that on my last evaluation that I did. Sometimes I feel like he is listening more to the person standing at the podium than he is to the commission as to what we want. He's trying to be too much, he's not paying as much attention, in my opinion, to the commission as he does with those standing at the podium. I had several instances that I brought up that bear that in mind. And the fact that their firm has had some issues in keeping up with having an attorney here. You're having to be here, but I know that you are very busy. I think we did find during COVID that we can do things by Zoom or whatever, but I wouldn't want to have to do that. I wouldn't want to have to deal with somebody by Zoom long distance. That's just my opinion. So it's, I really do think that we need to, it's my opinion that we need to send out some RFPs. And I understand Commissioner Ambrose that what are we looking for? What are we going to get? We've discussed that as well in the past, but I think it's time that we take a look at it.
Well, I'm in a position right now. Right now, I think we need to lay things as is. I'm hoping in the future that we can hire our own attorney in-house. That's my vision for next attorney. I know that might be 5 years, 10 years down the road, but that's my view of where we're coming from now. So right now, I'm not in favor of going out for RFQ at this time. All right, any other? All righty, just moving right along. City Attorney's report, an update.
Mr. Mayor, we don't have any.
Vote on that, don't we?
That wasn't a motion to vote on anything. They say discuss.
Oh, okay.
Well, we can vote on it if you want to make a motion.
No, thank you. What?
Yeah. Okay. Say you had nothing?
No, nothing, Mr. Mayor.
City Manager?
I guess the big thing that's coming up is that there will be another presentation on Bridalwood in the month of July to the City Commission on where they are at now. They've significantly reduced the number of lots and made them a little larger, as well as provided some additional amenities and increased the design guidelines for the homes. So they'll be presenting to y'all before they present to the plan board and it goes forward. And any feedback you have as far as conversations with the neighbors or anything like that, obviously we want to be as thorough as possible in getting feedback. So any expectations from the commission, if y'all want to relay them to me and or Christy as this moves forward, let me know, because I understand it's a very large development. Well, we'll be doing some additional things to get some feedback from the community.
Thank you. Is Bruce on the line? Does he have anything?
Is the brush truck is here. Went out to Utah last week and picked it up. It is in station and in service. So that piece of equipment is up and running. Status update on the sewer plant. It's out for permitting right now with FDEP. There was a couple things that need to be changed with the engineers. So we should be going out to bid on it. And I believe the bids for the water line interconnect close this week or next. And we will be opening them and looking at them. So that should be coming to the commission on the 14th. That's all I got.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to see those documents if I could for the second plant, if that's
Yeah,
possible.
that was one thing. As soon as, when they came in, we gave them to you. So I don't know if the resubmittal was when I had COVID.
No, for the sewer plant.
Oh, the sewer
that Bruce
plant.
was mentioning. No, I
Okay.
think this ship has sailed. I don't think
Yeah,
there's really
okay,
any
all
point
right.
in me looking at revised submittals at
Yes,
this
we'll
point.
get that to you. Yeah.
I'd like to
that's-
see the
okay,
wastewater
definitely.
treatment plant.
Okay.
Is there a design also available for the wetlands treatment discharge? I'd like to see that as
Yeah,
well,
we'll get that
if I could.
Packet with at Swanee River right now and FDEP. As soon as we get it back and any changes will go onto the plans, I'll get you a copy.
Okay, thanks. And I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for cooking on Saturday. I was sad that I wasn't able to stay to eat some of your cooking, but it was nice and it was fabulous to be there and see old friends and make some new friends. And my 14-year-old, Miss Vice Mayor Gloria James, was very sad that she didn't see you, because the only reason she went was to see you. She got at Catherine Taylor Park. She was very sad she didn't see you, but she enjoyed it anyway. So thank you.
I had to bring potato salad, so I couldn't come too early because I didn't want it out in the heat.
Bruce mentioned the fire truck coming in and the brush truck, and we have 2 new vehicles that are in production, I guess, at E1 that'll be coming the end of the year. We have a bay up front we're not using because the floor is falling in, and I'm wondering if staff could bring back to the commission a proposal for construction and fixing of that floor with a drain underneath that's eroding it, because we're going to need to house that equipment inside to take care of it. And so I think that should come back as soon as it can for us to consider as an item out of the ARPA funds for that. And I would like to say I did enjoy the Juneteenth Day at Catherine Taylor Park, particularly your blueberry dump with your homemade blueberries. So thank you very much. And that is it.
I was not able to attend Juneteenth. My grandson in Colorado was in a tournament. We were involved with games Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and they did win first place. So that's where we spent the most of the time, is was looking at our phones for the games. That's all I have. Thank you.
You're welcome. Nothing tonight. All right. And I just want to say thank you all for that help support Juneteenth. It turned out very, very well. Very well. Well attended, good food. Only complaint I got was one young man, he didn't want to get out there, bounce our pool. Why they can't stay just a little bit longer. So I'm going to extend it next year for his cost, so he can stay a little longer in the pool. And other comments I have is, I think Jerry says a land development consultant, something like that, whatever it is. I always said politicians talk a lot, preachers talk a lot, attorneys talk a lot, but he beat the cake tonight, so I'm going to add him to the list. Whatever it is, I'm going to add him to the list. With that being said, I entertain a motion to adjourn.